as
How's it,
well.
guys?
We've got Max on here. Hey, Scott. Hey, Max. It's good to see you.
Hi, Roger.
Just waiting for our others to join us. But good to have you guys on. I am in Vienna today, so new town, new day. And we have Max here from New Zealand. Hey, Max, good to have you on here. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. We have David as well. We've got Scott on, and then just checking in on the others who are going to, I'm sure, be joining at any moment. We've got Jeremy and Deborah who put some notes in here as well. And then we also have got, I believe, Pat and Nicole who should be joining us. And then we also have got, I'm sure, Angie who'll be on at some point as well, I'm guessing. So Jeremy's on here right now as well. So as everyone's joining and as they're coming on board, let me first of all share a couple of quick updates. So we've got the updates off the back of this as well, and then we'll jump into it as we go as well. First update is let's just talk a little bit about our Sapphire Circle. So first thing is that on the Sapphire Circle, we have got obviously Pat and Nicole, who are part of Sapphire Circle, as is David and Angie, running the education side of things. Scott, who we spent some time with last month in London, with some interesting updates. We'll cover some of those as we go as well. We have two new members who actually most likely won't be on this call because it's the middle of the night for them. They're based in Hawaii, and that's Kimmy and Richard Brook. So their details, I'm going to kind of drop you so you kind of know a bit more about what they're up to and what they're doing. And then we also have Max, who has joined us, who was part of Crystal Circle, grew his business, and now is doing some pretty exciting things. And it's time to really start accelerating where he's at and to actually kind of build his business. And his business is called Maxtel Software. And I'd love it, actually, just as a bit of introduction, if Max, you just shared with everyone just what's, basically how the business has grown, what it does, how the business has grown, and basically at the moment, what the kind of, some of the things you were sharing with me just recently, what some of the big things you've got now, aiming to get planned for in the coming year ahead.
Thank you, Roger. So yeah, it's great to be back. So I've got Maxtel Software, which primarily looks after McDonald's restaurants, and we've just grown the business from about 50% over the last year. Our turnover is about 2 mil, and I've got a great GM on board who was the ex-CEO of McDonald's New Zealand. And what we're doing is we're now starting to accelerate and believing that things can happen. And I just went to the convention in Orlando about 2 weeks ago, and I met a partner over there in Australia that wants to take us through the IPO process, and which boggled my mind for a start. And then I started to believe, well, maybe it is possible, and it'd be awesome to be able to grow fast again. I had this assumption that it would be, I could only do it under sort of what I knew I could cope with, and it was going to take 2 or 3 years to get through the process. And I was 1 year into that process and progressing, but everyone seems to want to make it go faster, and now I'd like to make it go faster too. So that's why I've joined back up again, to make it go faster and enjoy the journey.
Awesome, very cool. Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting. Like, it was actually because Max got like around like a blue level person who was like saying, well, why wouldn't you just list a company? Why wouldn't you just make it, this much bigger? And why wouldn't you just, go there? And who are the biggest competitors? And why don't we just go buy them? And it's just that whole different simplistic mindset, which is what Sapphire Circle is all about. And I know even for, those who aren't on the call that might be kind of listening in, this is the critical thing about looking at future wealth. I want to share this as a bit of a story as well, because I think there's some really, really interesting things that are happening in the world at the moment. And we're seeing kind of history being made all around us at the moment. Here's a little story about Jeff Bezos. I mean, like, before, if someone was a billionaire, that was like a big deal. I mean, like, for most people in the world, a millionaire is a big deal. Billionaire is a big deal. Here, he makes $9 billion in 2 days. I mean, just because of his shares in Amazon, right? So now, and this is, by the way, this is just like beginning of this week, right? April 27th. So here, like, he's actually, his wealth has gone up. It actually hit 100 billion in February. So between the time we started the Sapphire Circle and today, which has been 4 months, because we only started in January, actually it was really February, but like, he's actually been going up by like about $8 to $10 billion per month at the moment. That's the rate of growth. which is just kind of mind-boggling, right? But it's because it's all about future potential of Amazon, right? And how much Amazon is just growing. And, it's really crazy. We were talking about this the other day. I was speaking to Danny and Jess, and I was saying, hey, like, what would happen if you actually gave like a 20% hike on your customers, right? Like going from $99 to $119. All you're doing is adding $20. You're just adding $20 for every customer. Well, when you've got 100 million customers, that's $2 billion with one thing you do. So multipliers is everything, right? So like Sapphire is all about multipliers. It's like, how do you create a multiplier? And then you just have enough of those that the leverage becomes really massive. And then from there, everything starts to shift, right? And it's not about how do you add more value, because most people, by the time they get to emerald level, they've figured out a value. They just haven't figured out how to really kind of like create viral multipliers off the back of it. So this year, I'm going to drop that in here. This is the Sapphire Circle notes. So I'm going to drop them in here as well. I'm also going to drop in here, basically, here's Richard's page. So I'm actually going to drop this in so you know who Richard is, and Richard will be listening to this as well, because they're basically going to be joining one of the Emerald Cores, which is on a good time zone for Hawaii. But we definitely will be, but we will be getting their input as well, and all the kind of blue level questions, we'll kind of link them back to this too. But this is Richard, who basically he's got a number of companies with Kimmy. One of them is a network marketing company that he sold to Forever Living, and then which was recent, and they just went on this like big holiday around the world. And then he also has a big online company, and now building a training company off the back of that as well, right? So 3 different companies that he's really getting focused at. And Kimmy is on that same journey and actually focusing at those same areas as well, with her own part of her network marketing company built into that as well. So I'm just going to kind of link those both into here. And I think I gave the wrong link there. That wasn't a good idea. And then as we'll go through with everyone on this call, obviously we will then also link into, do it again. Why does it do that? No. Okay, one more time, third time lucky. And then we'll actually just get everyone's links as we go as well. But what I'm going to do is because I have some things I'd like to share about what my real learnings were around blockchain and so on as we go. So I want to do a bit of that as we go as well. But first, I want to get into everyone's questions to make this as topical as possible. So what I'm going to do is run through everyone's kind of Q&As here. And then from there, we will then jump into the call. All right, so let me open up the call here. And here we are. All right. Okay, so we'll do it in a different order from the last call that we had, right? So on the last call, oh, that's not the right one either. Give me a second. Here it is. Okay. All right. And I think because Max just joined us, he may not have actually had time to add any questions in here, but we'll come over to him a little later anyway. I'm going to start this time round. We're going to start with Jeremy, and no, we're not. We're going to go the opposite direction, I said. So we're going to start with, no, we're not. We are. Sorry, my mistake. We're going to go with Jeremy, Deborah, right? So highlight. Okay, so highlight is knowing that our passion is education, viewing ourselves as an education business, starting with financial literacy, changing the focus and matching with customers for designing our products, including virtual CFO, which enable competencies within the team. Microdegree structure also helps with that. First learners are going through microdegree, close to having a deal with my pro done, which is good. Pitch decks are all done, and contacted messages to 10 CFO prospects, had one call, others in the pipeline. So the big question is, if we were to take up an offer from Suraj to start creating community and followers, which product level should we pitch this at, keeping in mind that we need to be careful with the number of CFO engagement we take on while in the transition? Okay, so well, let's talk about this a little bit, right? I mean, like, I'd love for you to talk a bit about your thinking around positioning yourself as an education company around financial literacy, and how that then links into a bigger mission of where you're at. Because we have been talking over the last couple of calls around the virtual CFO product. So if you were to actually maybe break that out a little bit and say, what's the real problem that you're really looking to solve? How do you see that fitting in between the education side and the services side that you're providing with the virtual CFO? That would be my question.
Okay, so the way we see it is when you, hey guys, hey Max, nice to see you. Sorry, just went straight steel. Big day of steel. I think for us, what we're seeing is that it's not only about making sure that teams have got the right advice at board level, But all the way beneath that, there's levels of help that need to come from within your team and from external advisors to the team. And I think just mentally, when you get into that old accounting mindset, it's always about, does this particular piece of information have a value, a dollar value? And you get to the point where it's just trading time for money all the time. And so it becomes a mindset thing. And I guess where our passion is and where it's always been is been about education. And we're very skilled at educating other people about finances. We're actually very skilled at that. And it's been something that we've been skilled at for a long while. And when we stop and put that mindset on things, it actually helps us to take a step back and say, are we actually setting it up so that people have got the ability to have this competency with their own company? Or are we setting it up so that we're doing all the doing? And so that for us was a big mindset shift. And I don't know if it's really clear what the distinction is, but if you had to run to your accountant for every single answer, where you could get the answer from your own team, or where your own team could be on the ground thinking ahead of time what is going to drive the cash flow, instead of waiting for the accountant to give you that in a financial historical data set, then it's about moving things forward. Like, you can actually move forward with growth instead of actually being constantly waiting for lag data to tell you how you've done, instead of telling you where you should go next.
And Roger, when you asked that question, I realised, oh, does it sound like we're changing tack again? And you've been saying do CFO for 3 years. So it's definitely doing CFO engagements is a core part of the product offering. It's just framing it in terms of, well, what are our other products and where are we heading ultimately? And it is something around education in the longer term, not knowing exactly what that looks like 10 years from now. It's just helpful to frame it that what we are doing now can be working towards impacting education in some way. And it's just that right now it's financial education.
So the difference is, you can offer a CFO engagement and do all the doing behind the scenes, or you can offer a CFO engagement and build all the support and infrastructure and team and their learning behind the scenes. At the end, one of them gives the person who's invested in the CFO package a scalable product. On the other side, they got a good accountant.
So just walk me through that just for a moment in terms of the different product lines, right? If you were to like zoom in on three, because obviously at the moment, the most important thing is the Magnify one, which is the virtual CFO one. But if you were to say, well, no, there's more than that. There's others that also solve problems at different levels. What would be the other two?
Well, there's no way to do scalable CFO.
Yeah.
No, there's no way to build a scalable.
Well, there is. There's Magnify, right? So you can magnify it, so you're making a lot more money for every CFO engagement, right?
True. But in terms of number of people, it becomes a capacity issue of where you actually get really good qualified CFOs. So it becomes a time versus money.
Yeah, it's not a multiply leverage, it's a magnify leverage. So it's not about how many, it's about how much. Yeah.
So when we look at the middle tier, there's a tier where people are quite happy with their accountant, but their accountant gives them the historical data set. So they still need their accountant for the tax and compliance work. And that's where you've built up a trust level for a long period of time. And it's really actually quite a difficult conversation to get someone. It takes a very long time to transition someone across from an accountant. And so that was not where we really felt the space was. So that middle level is really more about taking the information that their accountant gives them and turning it into real things that they can do. So it's more around the dashboards, it's more around teaching their team how to do the cash flow competencies of building things, because your accountant will actually tell you to cut costs. That's what most accountants do.
Two specific products would be Mastermind and MicroDegree, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So who would the Mastermind be for? For the CFOs as well, for the CEOs?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So managers, so basically businesses who are just below being able to take on a CFO engagement.
Okay.
So CFO is our top level engagement.
Okay. And then below that would be the MicroDegree?
Yep.
Yeah.
What are you calling the MicroDegree?
It's the title changed a little bit, didn't it, when it got up there? But it's around the 7 levers of cash flow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Got it.
So that's basically the core trading module. So startups, when they start and they don't have a great deal of money, do need to have a resource. If you can get in on that ground level and they start to rely on your advice.
So I'm going to hold you up there again. So now you've talked about a whole different avatar, which are startups. Are you actually saying you want to also, because until you get one thing going and you've got one thing that's driving money, you're back to trading lots and lots of stuff. And then that's the challenge, right? Is like, well, who actually are you actually aiming for? So if you're saying you're now going to aim for startups, that's a whole different demographic from the avatar of someone who's got a fast growing company that's really, got a different problem, which is I can't afford a top CFO, but I know I need one.
The startup avatars are the ones who are chasing me. So if I can give them something that I can do at a low time involvement, then that works well for me, and it works with a group of people who are chasing me. At the top end, where Jeremy's CFO engagement, we have a capacity issue because we've got the transition out of the current accounting practice. So we have a time capacity that's got a maximum before we can actually look at it. Takes a really long time to find a really quality CFO to bring on at that next level. So we've got a capacity issue there for how many can we actually serve.
Okay.
It takes a long time to onboard someone at that CFO level.
But you can still make a choice on how you're designing the business to have the customers that you want. So my question is your choice to be having a business that's focusing at startups?
No, not choosing.
Fast, no. But okay.
It's really important. I mean, you guys know this, right? I mean, you've been through this enough. It starts with who your customer is. So if you're now saying, no, my customer is going to be the people chasing me, is it because you're choosing those people, or just because they're chasing you, you're going to try and solve their problem? Let me put it a different way. How much are they willing to pay you?
Not much, if anything.
Yeah, so that's my question. It's like, just because people are chasing you doesn't mean you try and build a business around it, because they may not have the money to pay you in the first place, right?
Okay.
No. If you say, no, I want to build a business around that, I want to have startups to do that, you can take an example of an education company like Y Combinator, where Y Combinator is now a $1 billion organization, but they chose which startups. They said, we're only going to choose startups that are investable, right? And we're going to choose ones. And you can have thousands of startups that are applying, but we're going to give them only this many different places to come on board, right? Entrepreneur Resort says, look, we'll have startups that will come to us, but they better be willing to pay for 2 weeks to be at our resort, or else we're not going to give them free training, right? They can go to Genius U or somewhere else for that, right? But basically, everyone chooses what customer actually allows their business model to work. So that's my question for you, Deb. Is do you want these calls, when you're on this call, for us to be talking about how do you actually create an education business for startups, in which case I'd say create a Genius U, because that's what we've done. And then you've got something scalable at Sapphire level. Or do you want to just have a yellow level business where you're just there training people up, or giving them free advice through micro degrees, because micro degrees are free right now, right? But that's the thing. But if you say, how do I make a lot of money, right, and a really scalable business working with startups, the answer is you don't. You don't. I mean, no one does, right? That's why no one has. They'll do it where they're actually choosing a certain type of startup, which actually then has money to invest, or they'll do it where they're just giving free stuff, and then it's banks or other people that are actually, or advertisers that are actually then paying money to actually help those guys out, right? But there's lots of models, but it depends on who your customer is and how you're going to be better than anyone else in the market for that model, as opposed to, well, people are bugging me wanting my advice, so I might as well just create a business out of it. It's like, that's not the way to build a really, really scalable business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just more looking at not giving advice at that level at a one-to-one.
Well, you don't have to. I mean, you can. It's easy to stop that. You can say, "Hey, I'll pass you on to someone else who's giving, financial advice, for small businesses." There's loads of those people out there. Right? You don't have to solve their problem for them, because you've got your own life to live, right?
Yeah, I guess it was just really, it's the whole, how do you develop a lead funnel where.
Creating lead funnels are easy, right? It's not about how do you create them. It's about who your customer is going to be. So I'm asking you guys, I'm really clear about your higher level client, right? I'm really clear about that.
Yeah.
Right? And you can create a pathway around that, which you haven't yet done. You've got a high level, but you don't, and the idea of a mastermind, which links to that makes sense to me. It's like, yeah, you can do that too. That's still the same avatar. But I'd get off going for a totally different avatar at this point until you at least built one business up. Yeah.
And so that was I guess that's around our question set then, is really So for us, the introduction product that we have is really the cash flow strategy sessions. In that, we see very clearly whether people have got the financial capability of being in that high level CFO engagement. If they haven't got it in their financials, then they need something else. So that's kind of where we get blessed with seeing financial data. So that tells us a lot of stuff that people wouldn't necessarily tell you up front. But it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of time to build that trust, to get that financial data, to see the clarity of the financial data. So it's again, level.
Again, it has everything to do with who your actual customer is, right? Like Max is on this call now. We're going to talk about Max, and he's going to be talking about how his whole customer is just McDonald's. That's it at this point. At some point, it'll go beyond that, but at this point, it's just McDonald's. But there's lots of McDonald's out there, right? So in every case, it's about who your actual customer is. So are you guys okay for now for us to really make sure that we lock this down, that we remain with one avatar until you're making at least $1 million from that avatar, at least, right? Because at least that way you're then, okay, well, then we're actually proving we can actually make a business off one avatar before we start running off to the second and third avatar, and we still don't have the business coming in for the first one. Yeah?
Yep. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I
think we were getting confused that the micro degree was part of the product, like the lowest level of the product range, but I get that that's actually a different avatar.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, you can create a micro degree on how you can actually generate an extra $200,000 in cash flow when you've got $1 million business, right? And guess what? The only people that will do the micro degree are the ones that actually are using the 7 levers for $1 million business, right? Then you've then got a funnel that leads you into all the people that then want to actually have you as a virtual CFO, but you're choosing on just that avatar. That's exactly what Strategic Coach does. I'll show you their model. They say we only want to work with companies that are $1 million plus, and then they have an entire funnel from people, and they've got hundreds of people that they work with. They've got a $20 million business that just looks after people that have got businesses of $1 million plus, right? But it's because they actually focus at just that avatar, and now they can go out and give free training and all the rest of it, right? But the fact is they still built a solid business first based on one avatar. Yeah.
It's so hard to go back from having 3 avatars in the accounting firm to having like one avatar in a startup. It's the startup thing that's really...
and you can still have the mindset of 3, but you've got to get one lane of the road open before you can start creating the other 2 lanes, or else you spend your whole time building a 3-lane highway and it never has an exit ramp and no one ever gets on it, right? And as long as you've got like really, really deep pockets to put lots and lots of money in to build a 3-lane highway, go build a 3-lane highway. But if you want it to cash flow itself, get one lane going that people can drive down, then build a second lane, then build a 3rd lane. So you can still be thinking about 3 avatars. Don't try and launch them all at the same time, or else you've got to have the money to pay for a whole 3-lane highway until the whole thing's built, as opposed to just starting with one lane at a time. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll come back to it, but basically this is as much about basically how do you actually MVP to a new $1 million, lane, as it is, and it's for everyone. It's the same thing. If you're actually going to be building, for Max, it'll be the same thing when he's like, okay, I'm going to go beyond McDonald's. Then it's like, well, then how do you create a pathway outside of that, right? Or for Angie and Davis, the same thing, right? Is how do you create that pathway? For Scott, it's the same thing as well. We were talking about that when we were together. It's like, he's got a really, really straightforward pathway for people in South Africa that want to be investors, because he's got a whole team on the ground in South Africa to do that. But he doesn't have a simple pathway for people in England to do the same thing right now, right? So it's like, well, then how do we create a country by country model that allows that to happen by what we learn in South Africa, as opposed to just keep on relying on South Africa while the rest of the world never quite kind of like comes on board on the same pathway. And what are the steps to make that happen is about like, how do you build a lane at a time? Then you can have a 20-lane highway if you want to, but you have to have that kind of like lane mentality first from beginning to end. And the traffic's moving because the money's coming in, right? The moment money's coming in, it's like, cool, now traffic's moving, right? And then you can actually go out and get like more and more flow from that, and then get someone to manage it. So your promotion becomes a process. And once it becomes a process, it's just rolling. Then you've got time to move to the second one, third one without having to worry about the first one, because it's just moving anyway, So that's the key. So we'll come back into like the detail on what Suraj should do and so on, and how that could actually look. And you can still say, I want to have that second avatar. And frankly, you could even take exactly your micro degree at the moment and say, hey, let's make that like a junior school micro degree. So we've actually got it for kids and stuff like that, right? And have it, you're not needing to make money out of it, because the money's coming from the rest of the business anyway. Okay, look, let's come over to Scott next, right? I'm going to go in a bit of a different order today. So on Scott, we had some time together. Scott has here highlights his new website and team. The London event had potential, but tech really let us down. week of my son, Africa Burn. Oh my God, I think Scott's back from Africa Burn. That should be interesting to hear about. And got here, biggest challenges are very tough cash flow month. And then that's actually like impacting the team as well. And then got here, the biggest questions, focus of the team. So many things to do and getting clear on the top 3 KPIs. Getting company to think more about revenue and anyone know anyone of SoftBank at SoftBank. Okay. So Scott, first of all, tell us, how was Africa Burn?
Yeah, it was awesome. Eh? Look, to be fair, I was there with my 6-year-old son, so it was no crazy stuff. It was more like camping because my wife's away, so it was more like camping with your son in the desert. But yeah, I suppose the biggest take I would say is that, like most things in life, and I don't need to tell anyone that's on this call, everything you're told not to do in life, when you do it, is generally a great experience. And yeah, I mean, all the stuff that people talk about, hippies and drugs and all that, yeah, there might be a bit of that, but I mean, you can find that anywhere in the world. But there's so much other stuff that's actually really awesome. So yeah, I'm glad I went.
That's very cool. That's awesome.
Quite a good experience.
That's brilliant. Very, very good. And yeah, like talk a bit before we get onto the questions. I talk a bit as well, just the experience of the UK and like some of the connections, and you got that as a highlight, like the event we ran and so on. Just like, you know, what you were seeing, because you've been traveling a lot recently anyway. But what was like one or two of the takeaways just from what happened in the UK?
Yeah, look, I suppose there's 2 major takeaways. One is that at a business level, blockchain is becoming more and more prevalent, and just the mention of talking about that, people from all different walks of life want to be in part of it. And, you know, it's probably, yeah, a lot of people were very interested in our event. On a negative side, to back up what you said, you know, I've been running events for 15 years and, you know, really not that difficult, actually. Well, no, let me argue. It shouldn't be that difficult. But you know, you've got all the systems in-house, but yet you go to a new country and it feels like you're a startup all over again, making all the same mistakes. And for everyone who's online, we actually paid a lot of money. So I said to the guys, no, pay properly. I don't want amateurs. And it was, technologically, it was a disaster. We had hundreds of people waiting to get online for the, live stream, and
yeah.
They just couldn't get it to work. And then even the people actually in the room, Roger, myself, and David Orban, like the bloody speakers were, you know, the microphones were a disaster. And then just to put a nail in the coffin, you know, I always record every event I do, but I said to them, and they said, no, we've got all the fancy equipment, we don't need to record it. So I didn't record it with my camera.
Oh, you didn't record it.
Until about halfway through. And they buggered that up as well. So, you know, I've got some amateur thing at the back of the room that I you know, put on 20 minutes into the event already. So, yeah, I suppose a great opportunity lost.
Got it. Okay, got it. Okay, let's talk about team. Like with the team, what like at the moment, I know because we've talked in the past around putting the flight decks together and everything like that. What are the key KPIs that you're getting the team to be looking at right now?
Yes, I think I actually had a really. So I was updating my sheet while you were talking to the previous 2. Do you guys just by the way, just to give a little bit of I don't know, just a chuck out. I don't know if you know Keith Cunningham from Keys to the Vault.
Yeah.
Conversation you guys were just having previously. I just suggest they go and look at Keith Cunningham, Keys to the Vault, because I don't know if I was missing something, but there was a lot of connections with what they were saying about sort of training for entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, actually, I mean, I'll just add a bit to that as well. So Keith, I know when he was launching that, he put like over $1 million into running that thing, right? So basically, Keith likes to call himself the real rich dad, right? Because he basically did the whole cash flow quadrant and all that kind of stuff that he kind of taught Robert Kiyosaki. And that was when they were both doing stuff for Money and You and things like this. And then Robert Kiyosaki took all that stuff and then turned it into Rich Dad Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant and all that kind of stuff. And then Keith never really got any credit for any of that. So I think he's a bit bitter about it as well. But basically, I've spoken with him a few times. I've spoken with him, I think, once in Sweden. And I think at an event that we were at together, maybe at TLC or somewhere like that, he was just in the midst of launching it. And it is basically a full dashboard, metrics and everything on how to run a business but he actually makes, it's kind of interesting because he does make money from charging that out, but he makes a lot of his money from his mastermind groups. Did you ever go in one of his mastermind groups, Scott?
No. So I suppose all I'm trying to say, Roger, is I met him and you know what the conversation you guys were just having previously was around the CFO space, education, training entrepreneurs and all that. And I just thought it's something to look at because it feels like it's already there in many ways, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah. He does it in a particular way. His model is very much actually charging, I think he charged like 50 grand for each person that shows up in his mastermind group, and he meets them every 3 months, and he forces them all to have to go through their numbers and their metrics. They all use his accounting software, and then they actually then pay him the money to show up and do that. And I think he's got like 20 or 30 people doing that. So he makes a couple of million a year just basically looking after those people with the mastermind model off the back of that, which is kind of interesting. I'll show you a bit more about it so you can kind of see what his model looks like, because it could be there's some interesting things around that too. But yeah, so to
answer your question on the KPIs, I actually had a big awakening just this morning. I got back from leave because the one thing about being in the desert, there's no Wi-Fi, which was spectacular. But then you come home and you switch your phone on, and it feels like all hell is broken loose. So, but actually, it's the question was around not so much the global or team KPIs, but actually my direct reports, getting very clear for them. What are their top 3 things that I expect from them in the next 3 months? So that we stop having 20 things on the radar. And it's like, look, you're going to be held accountable if these 3 things are done or not done. You know what I mean? And it became very clear to me. I had a good meeting this morning with my, what I would refer to in this context as a COO. Basically, we call him a PMO, but it's basically the person that's organizing everyone. And it was about getting my top 7 direct reports. What are their top 3 KPIs? And then my question was really, there's so much to do. I'm going to have to spend some time really delving down into what is it that each person is accountable for, and therefore their teams below them, they've got to go and then hold people accountable to get to that.
What's the name of your new general manager again?
Lyndon Booth.
Okay, so is he putting that together for you, or are you trying to figure that out?
So he's put together all the structures and the Trello boards. One of my wins that you missed there was getting Scrum all actually starting to work. Having the transparency, and we're using Trello boards, and it's really quite exciting. Everything that's happening there. No, really, his request back to me was that, look, for me, as in when I'm talking now from him, for me and for the other 6 direct reports you've got, I think you need to sit down with us and get very clear on what our 3 KPIs are that you expect from us, because everyone has too much on their plate right now.
Okay, got it. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, well, let's use that as a kind of a case study on this call as well. We'll run through that in more detail so we see exactly what it looks like, and then how that then all links back to revenue as we go through it as well. So we'll do that as an example, right? Okay, cool. Okay, great. Let's come over. Next, we are going to come up to David and Angie. So we've got here, highlight clarity on everyone's condition of success, forecasting profit within the next 3 months. Marsha has obtained 2 Ministry of Education licenses, which is pretty cool. Big questions are rhythm. Both David and I struggle with working with frequencies, tend to dedicate full days to each business. E.g., I might work on Education Angels Monday and Friday, childcare centers for senders on the Tuesday, Thursday, junior school on Wednesday, therefore shifting energies and feeling scattered. Any advice on that? Yeah, good question. Okay, so well, my first question actually is on the whole pause thing. Where's that at the moment? Has that moved forward? Have they got offers in? Are you part of that process now?
So with pause, hi Roger.
Hi.
With pause, they've acknowledged David's interest. So he just said, yeah, we're interested, send me the information. So they've said, yes, that was very quick. We'll get back to you as soon as we have some information for you. So they're still preparing the business for sale. So we will hear as soon as it comes on the market or as soon as it's available for us.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
yeah, it's good.
So that's moving. So that's moving anyway. And then with the actual business, how is that growing at the moment? Is it all on track at the moment?
Yeah, it's absolutely all on track. So within 3 months, we'll be in profit, which is really good because we've been piling money into it like crazy because it's, as you know, been a growth strategy. So we want one small business in Auckland, ideally. So we've been working on three businesses going through due diligence. So 2 of them have gone. They're no good to us. Potential third might come back to us with another one possibly on its way. But what's great about this is the learnings. So us getting really smart. So we know now it's much cheaper to buy businesses than to grow organically. Yeah. And I think we'll, after this next small business with 30 more educators, we're in profit, and we don't have to. The drive, yes, the drive then is about growth, sustainability, and growth, and improving systems and processes. So for me, I'm really interested in at the moment in the measures. So we worked out what every child's worth to us, what every educator's worth to us, and all those measures. But now we've realised that in many ways we've been overstaffing.
Yeah.
So, for example, bringing on a visiting teacher, we don't need one doing 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
We need one license needs 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
And we've calculated that based on what we believe to be true. So
yeah.
I'm just at the moment measuring that and seeing how that looks in reality.
Yeah.
So that when we buy businesses, we can say, right, it's that many children, so therefore we need this many teachers. It's a very quick decision, and we can. I'm really trying to operate like a pause level business.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when we take over pause, we are worthy of it, and
yeah.
that we can streamline from day one.
Yeah.
Using the experience we've had over the last 12 months,
Very
because
cool.
that's our problem.
So with you guys, what I want to do, because like this is one of the most important things on multipliers, right? We talked a little bit on the past, and I showed you the template on revenue, like on revenue models, like what is your predictable revenue model to grow? And in your case, we went through a green level and a blue level one, right? We said, here's what the green level one would look like. We went through, like, for every child, they're actually going to generate, this much money, $1,000 a month kind of thing. And so therefore we can actually say, therefore we actually get this many, children in then it's going to actually, make this much money for the company. And then we took that up to blue level and said, from an investment point of view, every time you put in $1,000, you're going to get, $1,500 back by the end of the year. This is how that happens. So then immediately you're actually attracting the resources you need, and you're also attracting up the team. That's revenue model, right? What you're now talking about, which is the next part, is cost model, right? It's like, what's the replicable cost model that links in with the revenue model, right? And because then you can grow profitably. And what happens in many cases, like Uber is a good example, where they have a really solid revenue model, and they've actually got a long curve to get the cost model to profit, where they're like, hey, we'll even lose lots of money for the first 5 years, but we're okay doing that because eventually we can see that actually the marginal cost actually goes down and down and down, and our profit goes up. And everyone goes, yeah, we can see that. And so they go through that as well. So at the moment, are you in that process, or have you worked out yet what that replicable cost model looks like?
I'm in the process. I do know that for every license of 50 children, 50 full-time equivalent children, we need one teacher doing 30 hours.
Okay.
And we know that one teacher is going to cost us about $58,000 a year. So
what are we talking about here? We're talking now about we're talking about the centers, not the actual home care, right?
We're talking about home care.
A teacher in the home care?
Yeah, we have to have a qualified registered teacher visit all the homes to make sure that the home care people, this is what we get our money for, to make sure that the home-based educators are providing an appropriate curriculum.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So you have, okay. So if we just walk this through for a second, when you actually have the replicable model on the students, we know that for each child that comes on board, that you're making, what was the number? Like $1,000. It was like $1,000.
It depends on their enrollment time, enrollments, part-time, full-time, but on average, it's really about $800 a year.
Okay, so you've got $800, right? And then from that, the actual cost of the person who's going to look after that child is how much?
It's 8,000, sorry, not 800. So the cost of a visiting teacher is 58,000-ish a year. Do you remember rightly? How
much is it for the child care, for the actual carer for them?
So that's after subsidy. So again, they vary. So we pay about 45% on average of our revenue to the educator.
45%.
Yeah.
To the educator.
Yeah.
So if you're making $8,000
on average,
so you're paying $8,000, then it's going to cost you somewhere in the region of like close to $4,000, right?
Yes.
Okay. For that, so it's $4,000 to the educator. Okay, and then you've then got what other costs?
That's the main cost. What each educator runs a vehicle, so that's roughly about $400 a month to run a car.
Do you pay for that?
So, yes, we do. Not each educator, sorry, each visiting teacher runs a vehicle. So if you think one visiting teacher, 50 children, and that visiting teacher, we have to cover her salary and her car, and then it's just printing and stationery.
You're saying the minimum was 30 children, was it?
The license is 50. For one visiting teacher, we've got 50 children.
Okay. All right. So that's your kind of, so your new unit metric with the teacher is 50 children. If you've got anything less than 50, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
Unless
Well, if it's less than 30, it doesn't work.
Okay.
But we operate on 50. That's our goal.
And so and how much are you paying for that teacher?
And that teacher is $40,000 plus on costs. So it's about 46, not 58. It's about $46,000 on a 30-hour contract.
Okay. So you could almost argue that that works out almost like $1,000 per child, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for 50 children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which means now you're saying that, like, you know, once you've got 50 children, you're making $8,000 per year per child. You have to pay $4,000 to the educator. You're going to have to pay $1,000 to the teacher. Yeah. So when you're at capacity where you've got all 50, then you're really saying at that point you're making, like, you know, $3,000 per child, really.
Yeah, less operating expenses. Yeah.
So that's your gross, right? So you got $3,000 gross profit. And then it's a real key of where you actually, you know, find those groups of 50. And when you get yourself a license, like one of the licenses you got, is that for just one group of 50 educators, or is it for teachers, or is it a larger group?
We get a license for 80, but you can only have 50 with one visiting teacher. So we're using the teachers as the measure, not the license, because that's what we measure. Because we can have 2 licenses, both at 50. So it's better to use the 50 as the measure.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So I get that in terms of the number. And then you actually said, well, how many, like by this time at the end of this year, how many of these groups of 50 are you actually planning for? Or how many would it be?
So we've got, wow, lots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've currently got 6 groups of 50.
Yeah.
We're not at 50 for all 6. In fact, we're only at 50 for one of them, just coming up to 50 for one of them.
Okay.
But we've got 6 licenses, yes.
All right. And what do you want? And what's it going to be by this time next year?
By this time next year, we want the bigger regions to have at least 2 licenses each. So we'd be going by this time next year, we'd be looking probably around 10 licenses.
Okay. All right.
Unless we buy pools, and then it'll be a lot more than that.
Okay. And you don't know at this point exactly how they're structured, but there's probably something similar, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, like the other element is that when you're going out to get funding, because you're not needing to get funding right now because you're actually just doing funding for yourself, right? Yeah. But we talked about that as well, about going out and actually creating an education fund where people would be putting money in to launch new areas if you wanted to, or to buy over existing ones for those areas as well, right?
Yeah.
Are you still looking at that as a strategy going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at 3 at the moment, the potential 4th coming on the market. And I think we're really good at that now.
Okay.
So we've got it systemized. So if I get all the information within 3 hours, I can do the due diligence, sometimes less. And that's not my time necessarily. So that's where I want to know all the cost measures as well as the revenue measures, so we can make big decisions on whether to buy them or not. Because what we can then do, our plan is that every funding period, of which there are 3 a year, over the next 12 months, we can just go and buy a business.
Yeah.
And just keep doing that until until we decide to stop.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And there's going to be an extra piece to this, which is your management of all those teachers and so on, which is going to add an extra overhead into it as well at that point, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of how you do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're probably a little bit top heavy in that regard at the moment, but that's planning for the future.
Yeah.
So it means that we won't have to worry about that for at least 6 or 8 months. And then after that, we'll be looking at Marcia, getting another Marcia. So training someone to do her job in the same way would solve that problem. But we might, if we bought pools, we'd inherit that person, potentially. Yeah.
All right, got it. Okay, cool. Okay, so that whole basics is actually kind of a really key thing in terms of how you want to actually fund it, because there's going to be a bottleneck somewhere unless you actually create a way where that bottleneck doesn't need to show up, right? Because you can actually choose, do I want to find someone to fund in the same way that really you're kind of saying, like, a region with 50 people with one teacher, that's kind of like a multiply unit. That's almost like a kind of a mini school, or maybe two or three of them in an area would be like one school. So then you could actually say, well, someone could invest and be invested in the whole, which is what people prefer to do. And then it helps you to actually add another kind of like 3 or 4 of these regions in, or they just invest in one particular area, right? Which means that they're getting a return from that area as well. And how you decide to manage that makes all the difference, because at some point you can turn into a license model, which is what we talked about before, where you said, well, this is a license model which then can use, junior school, products and so on, and then other people around the country could be using the same thing. Final question I have for you before I come over to Max is going to be a question around community, because the biggest magic source that's going to come from what you're doing, which will set you apart beyond just hoping everyone's giving good service, is going to be the fact that you've actually got a community of some sort where you've got people doing things online, you've got the education stuff that people can connect up to, you've got the actual educators themselves that are learning from each other, all that stuff we talked about. So has there been any progress in that area?
There hasn't, but there has at the same time. So what we've done is we had our flight deck meeting, our conditions of success meeting with our team. Mm-hmm. So the whole team, so we divvied up the responsibilities. Everyone's on board. Marcia has got 2 of our licenses without me having to be present at all. Yeah. So that's my condition of success. Yeah. So that's something that I'll be working on over probably from next month, as well as we now settle down and we're getting to the profitable stage. So from next month, I'll be giving up a portion of my week to actually making that happen and bring people in to support me doing that. So we've got our own internal online system called Docebo, which is what Rustica sells. Mm-hmm. So we'll be using that for our so we can pull off the right reports for the Ministry of Education for our home-based educators, but then we can also take what we do there and put it on other platforms like Genius U, or we can share it in other formats with other communities. So a big part of my condition of success, even though I won't be doing it all myself, will be the community and building that portal full of fantastic resources. And as I'm doing that with Education Angels, I'll be doing exactly the same thing with my childcare centres at the same time. And the idea is to build community through the parents, so that both David and I, and David can share the stuff I create too, so that both David and I are building a brand within New Zealand where we become known as the place to go to when you have a baby, because it's the best level of support you can get anywhere. Yeah. And then it's the natural next step then that they'll come into our home-based business or to our childcare centres. And we're happy to share the love, and they can go to David's or they can come to mine. We don't care, as long as they come to one of us, because we're both supporting this business anyway. Yeah. So that's the plan, and that's the team are on board with that, and my teams and Education Angels. So that will happen now. Okay.
All right. Cool. And I mean, just a really that's a super duper important point for everyone as well, which is basically definitely the whole advantage of scale, or the whole concept of economies of scale, and that idea of economies of scale being like, if you've got a bigger factory, you can make things cheaper, right? Or you can make things more efficient. It just is no longer the case, right? Because there's so many different ways now to actually get people what they want without needing to go out and build a big factory, right? So then it's like, well, then what's the actual barrier to entry of someone else coming on board, right? What is at the end of the day the magic sauce that makes other people say, well, we can't compete with that anymore? And if you take the likes of Uber, take the likes of Airbnb, their magic sauce, the one thing which is basically their biggest competitive edge, is their platform. It's the fact that they've got a platform that just gets to a critical mass, and then no one else can really compete, and they become number one in that particular area, right? So platform is one way to do it, where you've just got more interlinks. And that's the network effect, right? That every single time you add another one in, it becomes so much more valuable to something which is already there and interconnected than someone trying to start up from scratch. So it's either going to be platform or it's going to be community. And that's, again, multiply and magnify, platform, community, right? It's like it's going to be, well, you just have such a strong community, for someone else to try and create a community from scratch, they might as well just come and join your community. So everyone then comes and joins it. Or why go and start up your own shop when you can just go into Amazon, because they've already got a platform to do it? Why go up and set up a community? You can go to Facebook, they've already got a community to do it. So it's always about doing that. And what we're seeing at the moment is we're basically seeing this massive shift. And I think this is where we're going to see all the new billion-dollar businesses. We're seeing a massive shift from the scale of platform, like one size fits all platform, like an Airbnb, or scale of community, like one global platform, like Facebook. And what we're doing is we're now going and retracting back down to fragmented communities and platforms, which are much, much more based on the actual user themselves, right? So if you think about the difference of a let's take like a WhatsApp or an Instagram, right? Where it's basically a one function app. So the idea of a one function app is where it's like, well, I just do one thing with this, is take photos with it, right? And what's happened is that everyone went for a while into like one function apps. But then it got to a point where it's like, well, this isn't actually very helpful to me anymore because I've got to go to all these different apps to do all the things I want to do. So now we're going from one function apps to one user app, like basically the app for one customer. So like an entrepreneur, Genius U, one user app. Strava, fitness, one user app. It'll do everything you need for fitness. Or, whereas you had to before go to one app to track your running, you had to go to another one to track your cycling, you had another one to see when the marathons were on, you had to go to another one to post your photos. Now it's just like one user app, which is basically everything's on that one place. So if you think about it that way, which is like, well, how do we actually create what we're doing into a one user experience, whereas it's the only one thing you need and you're combining all the things together. And then fundamentally, then it's like, okay, well, then that means that now you've got a whole new set of not one global community, but different user communities, like, and not just one big platform, but different user platforms, where it's like whatever it is that you're looking to do, there's a platform that's going to work for you specifically for who you are. And that's really where the world's actually going to be shifting in the next 5 years. And so thinking in that way, then it's much more the multiplier. And it's the same for each of you, the same way that, for Max with what he's doing, it'll be I mentioned that to him earlier, it'll be the data you're collecting across all of the different people that are using the platform to say, here's the industry standard of what your gross margin should be right now, or what your, yield per employee should be right now, or, what Scott's doing right now. It's like, across the board, it's not just the fact lots of people are actually using it, but here's all the trends going on within industry, like within property right now, or here's, all the options of where you can actually invest on the platform, but where people are investing as well. So people can then actually use all that data in a really effective way, which makes it impossible, for at least for a period of time, for others to actually come up and actually compete with you in that area. We're clearly doing that with both Entrepreneur Resource as a community and also Genius U as a platform. In both cases, like one's a magnify strategy, one's a multiply strategy, and that's why I'm growing those as two wings off the engine of EI, right? And it's just like for both of them to become billion-dollar wings off the back of it, but they can grow on their own, but with very different strategies, but both of them having a unique point of difference, which is why they can then get to critical mass, and then why go elsewhere when you can go to them, basically. Okay, let's come over to Max and what Max has shared here, which is highlight discovering some customers and partners want to make my IPO happen, and that is a realistic possibility in the next 2 years. Definitely it is. Biggest questions, how to effectively outsource product development, which is all about the tech side. What development roles must I keep in-house? And what should I trade for $2 million of capital, right? Good question. Okay. So Max, you shared a bit about your story earlier, which is awesome. First of all, you heard what Scott was saying just in terms of like Scrum and the fact they're going down that route. Do you want to talk a bit about like with your current development team, what you think is working well and what it is you're actually thinking could be better to outsource at the moment for you?
Okay, so we are utilizing Scrum and have been, but only so this year. So we only started it about 3 months ago. And that's working well in-house, but we haven't had much experience trying to make it work with remote people. We took on a new developer at the start of last month, and she spends 4 days a week working remotely. So we're still doing some of the Scrum with her, but she's still at least comes into the office once a week. So I just haven't had much success. I've tried with people in Philippines and in South Africa and one in Europe, and just haven't had much success on the outsourced part yet. So that was more, I understand the principle of Scrum, and I expect that to be useful in doing it. But then also, who's going to be the Scrum Master? Is that in a role I can outsource, or do I have to take that on myself?
Right.
And then from my perspective, if I have the 2 million capital, then I can assuming I can figure out how to outsource the product development, I can speed that up dramatically and get that through in the next 12 months rather than it taking 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So, or even quicker, just depending on how that goes.
Okay, got it. And from the point of view of the what you're doing right now on the capital side, what's your best idea of what you should or could be doing in terms of getting that $2 million in?
So one part could be that splitting off of the services arm. So if we sold the services, the bureau side of the business, that would raise a little bit of funds. And then the other part is I'm thinking of putting a proposition to the franchisees and getting them to contribute e.g. 20k each for something, and trying to work out what that something is. So want people that have a vested interest in seeing us grow faster.
Okay, all right, got it. Okay, so and by the way, who at the moment, like you mentioned 2 million, but is it the guys that you've got who are interested in coming on board that want to be putting that kind of money in at the moment, or are you still trying to figure that out?
Still trying to figure that out. So the 20,000 is pretty easy, and it's just how many of those. So 100 at 20,000 is 2 mil. So whether I go down that path or whether see if there's some people that want to put more in.
Right. Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, so let me just share a bit about my thoughts around that as we go in terms of best way and where that kind of fits in as well. All right. And there's quite a bit of background noise, I think. So I think if you maybe mute on your side, then that would help out there. Okay, cool. Okay, great. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is basically just walk through a couple of different things. And also just kind of some basics around what we have learned on the software side as we've gone forward as well, in terms of kind of some of the big kind of steps as we've been going. And just so you guys know, in terms of some of the growth of the kind of businesses that we've had, we just had our investor meets actually for our different companies. So we kind of like just shared with them, here's where things are at, here's how they're growing. We just had some more investment in for Genius U, now at a $24 million valuation, and going northwards of that off the back of what we're doing with the Alchemy Fund, which we also just launched. So all our tracking is kind of like heading in all in the right direction as well. But a lot of the work that we've been doing is much more the internal work on stuff that we've been covering as well. So let me just walk through, first of all, the kind of key things that I want to be covering on this call. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with Jeremy and Deborah, very much on the like pathway side. Like what's the best structure pathway wise? And then actually I'm going to jump from kind of yellow 3, which is like promotional. How do you build a promotion in the right effective way to make sure you got the right one, and go up to, Angie and David, and also Max, which is much more on the blue level, kind of like how do you make sure your investment's working properly while your time is working properly as well, and link that basically to the kind of process we're going through at the moment to make sure all your projects are becoming processes, because this is all process driven stuff. And then we're going to then kind of come down and actually use Scott and Wealth Migrate as a case study of basically how do we really make sure that your team is set up in effectively the right way as well. And I'm going to use, I think for pretty much all of this, I'll use Genius U as the business that I'll kind of jump into deeper in terms of the kind of the steps as we go through some of this as we go. So let's start first of all with these ones here. Jeremy and Deborah have this team charter here. So let me just kind of share it here, which is basically, there's the Kimokura one, there's the new website for Wealth Migrate. And then here is the current, I also have Max, so I dropped that in here as well, which is Max's business in here as well. And here's obviously Education Angels, so all different like websites. Okay, so yeah, there's Keith. Okay, we'll come back to Keith in a second. So basically here, creating an environment of value to serve the businesses who serve the world. And then that would, I'm guessing that under decisions plus strategic is basically the enterprise promise. Then this goes through all the details of that as well as we go. So we've got the customer promise, fast growth businesses. So I mean, I think this already does it, right? I mean, this is where you got to keep focus, fast growth businesses. So this is your avatar, right? And so this is that. Now you're talking about this specifically on the CFO, for the customer promise, for the virtual CFO, that's fine, right? So virtual CFO services through cash flow strategy sessions to online education courses for the whole team. Again, all of that is linking back to this one avatar. So this makes it really, really clear that that's who you're focusing at. And then you've got your other promises, which all are groovy that you bring together. So all good work on here to do all of that. And what I'm looking for is a product pathway, right? So, and here you've got the different areas here in terms of education. I think the education side can work. I mean, to be thinking about it in that way. I mean, fundamentally, at the end of the day, if you were to kind of like really argue, what is this from the point of view of tech terms, like, where do you sit if this was all fundamentally more than just a service you're providing, but actually became, either a platform or a tech service of some sort? It would all sit 100% under productivity. Right? It would be that you would be a productivity company, right? Which is because if you take like Slack, right? If you take QuickBooks, if you take Xero, like they're all productivity companies. They're actually making things more effective and efficient for people to be able to run a business, which is productivity. So I know you could say education, but I do think you are. I think you're more than education. To be able to provide education, I think is great. I mean, like for a lot of these companies, actually, help to provide education as well. But if you're going down that route, you're never going to have something fully multipliable unless you have either an investment part of it, or it's just like, so for example, Y Combinator. You could say, well, Y Combinator is an education company. You could say, yes, they do education, but they're primarily an investment company in that they invest in the companies they educate, right? So if you think about it that way, it's really important to get clarity. Like, okay, that's more what we're actually looking to do. And in your case, it's very specifically in a particular area, which is financial literacy as well, right? Now, if you say, yeah, but the end point is we're going to be beyond financial literacy, we're going to be in all areas of educating people, well then, okay, then you could say, all right, then let's actually keep the education field. I think you can still do that. But then the key thing is, how do you make sure you fit with one niche to begin with, where that one niche is then going to be focusing at one product line. Okay, so we got here, this is more your flow on the business model. And let's go to product range. Okay, so I guess that's the slide I'd like to see, is what is your product pathway? So if we go to our one, for example, when we actually are looking at the product pathways, which we're building at the moment, we can see, that we've actually got, we've got free entry, you remember, memberships, assessments, products. Then you actually become a leader, which means you actually get new things you can do, assessment certifications. Then you become a mentor, you can do new things, micro degrees, become a city leader. Then you become a global partner. And these are the 4 levels that we actually have people at, that then actually allow them to do things. And the reason this becomes really important is this then allows us to then actually have a very clear pathway of people to follow. It's like, oh, I'm at this level, then I can move up the next level, then I can move up the next level, and they can see where they're going as they go. So in your case, I'd be saying, well, look, get yourself basically that product pathway. This is what we're talking about right now. And you could say, well, the product pathway is going to start with a micro degree, which is how do you actually make your team financially literate? Because then at least it's still, and you can still use the 7 levers and everything, but it's more about how does your team or how does a company understand this, so that the CEO really, because you're real, person you're really going for is the person who's leading the company, who's going to go, I want my entire company to be more financially literate than it is. And then you're not just going for startups who are just trying to figure it out for themselves. They can go do it if they want to, but they're not the ones that then you should be going to afterwards to say, hey, now pay me money to do stuff. Or you're going to spend all your time basically with the same amount of effort that someone can actually be doing $1 million business, you're doing for a $100,000 business, and you're going to be tearing your hair out with people where they're going to demand so much from you without you ever making any real money out of it. But the same things that you're doing as the tools that allow you to move up to the next level, that makes a whole lot more sense to do that, right? So it's actually having that really, really clear step-by-step pathway for people where you could actually say, okay, well, let's actually do it where we actually have got, one step, which is your entry level, which can be a micro degree, which can be all about basically, finance. And the more you can do this, I know you're calling it Decisions Plus, which I guess is what you've decided, or Decisions Plus Strategic. Can I ask you guys for a second, what was the reason you chose that as your name?
2 words, Paul Dunn.
Oh, really? So,
Yeah.
so what was his thinking then? What did he say?
Those 3 years out, I'm really bad at coming up with names. Words are not my thing. I do numbers.
Yeah.
Numbers are good.
It was when that was created, it was more you consulting at that stage, wasn't it?
Yeah, and because we already had the company structure, it just became easy. So we just went, oh, we'll worry about the name later.
So you've actually registered a company that's called Decisions Plus Strategic?
Decisions Plus Proprietary Limited.
Oh, okay. So it's called Decisions Plus. But if you had to...
what we trade as, it's just, that's the name of the company. So then it just became easier to keep that as the name.
Okay. So there's no real thinking behind the name then, right? Really?
I'm really not good at thinking like that.
Okay.
The creative side of that is just so beyond me.
Actually, I've started thinking about it a bit lately, and I'd just sort of love it to be something like there's companies called Blue Mango and something like that actually has something about it. But
I just said we got to focus on getting customers. Let's not worry about the business name and rebranding right now. So that's kind of where I went. It's just like that's not a high priority.
But it all fits in, because if there's no actual real, like if it doesn't actually have a ring to it or a reason for being, then it actually makes it very difficult to then roll anything off it, right? Like Wealth Migrate has got a very, very clear like sense to it, which then allows Scott to have, like other wealth things that link off the back, like Wealthy Coin or like, Wealth Academy or Wealth University or like all these different elements, right? And similarly, with Education Angels, it's like, well, now we've got something that actually allows us to have, education, angel educators. And like, so then everything again links off the back of that as well. So like at the end of the day, if your brand isn't something that already, like says who you are, or at least, has a ring to it, which makes people then actually want to remember it and want to tell people about it, then that's when everything else becomes so much more difficult the moment that happens. It's like meeting someone who has a name that no one can spell. Right, he's got every single, like for the rest of his life, because his parents were so cruel. You've now got to basically say no, it's Sean, Shavun. Like it's like every single time that you actually are saying anything to anyone, right? So, but if it's like really simple, easy, it's like that's who it is. Then it's so easy to remember. Then that's off the back of it as well, right? Okay, so look, I will give you some of my thoughts, but basically, you guys, I think it would be worth you saying if you don't have a real reason that you're calling it decisions plus strategic, I'd change it, because it's just, and again, I don't want to see you keep on going back to the drawing board. I want you to get guys to get into action, right? So I think action's the thing that's missing the most at the moment, from actually going from the idea, which we've been talking about this idea for 3 years, right, to actually delivering on it, is so much more about just getting yourselves into action to make it happen. I know the virtual CFO stuff, you've already gone out, got to the list, get going on it. You should be actually at the point where you've got people going, I really, really want to be a part of this now. So, and you're getting all the materials and everything together. So now it's about actually just getting into that action to make that happen. Right. And it's about how do you actually, take these different elements and link them all together in a way that someone says, I really get what this is all about, right? In terms of the financial literacy side, because decisions plus strategic doesn't say anything about financial literacy or virtual CFO or anything at the moment. So people have to say, why did you call it that? And people will ask that question just like I do, if they're not clear as to why that is, right? Let's take 2 examples, right? Here's one. Here's the strategic coach, right? So what does strategic coach do? Right, and you can actually go have a look at this link and check it out. It's definitely worth it, because Dan Sullivan's done a really, really good job of basically focusing on one thing only. Even the word strategic coach, you get the idea behind it, right? It's like they're going to coach you on strategy. The #1 business coaching program for entrepreneurs, right? You learn more, register now. As Strategic Coach, our unique business coaching program starts with focus on growth in every area of business life. From that flows the freedom every entrepreneur dreams of. Here's the success stories, different people saying what they're great at, blah, blah, blah. Score yourself. Do you have a self-managing company? So the whole thing is about, are you at a point where your company actually is self-managing? Find out, right? So straight away you go in, it goes through self-managing company scorecard. Here's how the whole thing works, right? So you actually got that, so you can see what they actually focus at. Courage-based progress, right? Your mindset. Excitement-based focus. You own your future, abundant time sense, right? So what does abundant time sense mean? Well, either your management of personal and work time is out of control because you're continually distracted by worthless activities. It's like, 1 to 3. You have a chronic pattern of being super productive and then spending whole quarters feeling completely off track, 4 to 6. You use a conventional time system to fill up your calendar with the activities will keep everything moving along. So you're kind of moving along a bit, 7 to 9. Or you continually manage your time to increase personal rejuvenation, productivity, and preparation, 10 to 12. You get an idea as you're going through. It's like, oh, this is what it means to have an abundant time sense, to go from one to the other. Like when you go through all 8 and you go, oh, there's a pathway, 10 times future framework, you feel increasingly confused and angry about the rapid progress and breakthroughs of your competitors, all the way through to you're always transforming everything from your vision of building a 10 times bigger and better company. It's like where that's actually moving. It's kind of interesting that he's used the whole 10 times thing that I use as well. But so much of what he does is the same. I mean, he even uses like profiling and stuff like that, a different profiling system. But then he actually says, okay, so now I've got enough of what that is. I want to find out what my score is. You fill out details. So he's doing exactly the same stuff that we do, which is about assessments and things like that. But the whole thing is very, very clear. This is clearly not for someone who's just basically a startup company, right? You're looking at your whole team, you're looking at building it, and you're looking for a self-managing business to do it. They use this as their lead generator. So then they've got people coming in where then they said, right, are you up for actually coming on board? We have a signature program, which is where you actually meet every 3 months. I think they charge like $15,000 or something, but you got to actually show up in Toronto to do this. They've got the 10 times ambition program with Dan Sullivan, which basically it's the same thing, but he charges about double as much for his own time. And then he shows up and he'll have about 50 or 60 people in the room, like as he does this. And so if you think about that, he's basically taking I think he does it for like 2 days for each one. So you've got 2 days of his time every month for 50 to 100 people at $15,000 each, right? So he's basically making for a day or two of a month, like $1.5 million. And he does those, I think, like, 2 or 3 times a month. So he personally makes about $6-7 million, but then he's got all his teams doing similar ones where they follow the same process, and then they're using all of their kind of like process and so on. They also do these, which are kind of like little presentations. So they're kind of doing previews that, like, discovery sessions, and they've got other team members that do these. That obviously off the back of this, they have new people that sign up as well. So they kind of do it that way around. That's their entire process. They've been doing it for 20 years. They're worth $20 million in revenues a year, and it's so simple, right? In terms of what they do. They don't have to be any more complicated than that. So if you take one other example, like this one here, Keys to the Vault, this is the one where you've actually got Keith, who focuses very, very much on financial metrics. Not a great website. He's very old school in what he does. And like I said, he's a little bit bitter, but you've actually, because he does think he should have got better at this point. But here, CFO Scoreboard software, this is where he actually talks about, is your money taken? Yeah, I'm going to give you both these links, right? So you can have a look. So this is where, and he's very, again, focused at like high level entrepreneurs. Is your money, take control of it, better optics, better decisions, more money. And what he's doing effectively is creating forward indicators all the way through to say, right, like, let's not start with what your revenue is. Let's start with what your forecasts are based on the products, what revenue per product, what conversion rates, blah, blah, blah. Let's see how they actually map out, and then what actually happened across those. So he's got inputs that help you map them across those as well. So you can really understand what are the 1 or 2 key things you need to shift and change to make things happen differently, which is very similar to the kind of stuff that you're doing as well. And they've got a whole take the tour thing. And he's kind of like set this whole thing up, to give you an idea. He also does business simulators.
What you can't see.
There he is. Can kill you. So what he does here is the whole thing where he actually like says, as you cycle through, like, what would happen if you increased, your stock turnover by 5%? And so like, whoop, within 5 years, you see the difference, right? What would happen if you increase your margins like by 5%? Whoop, you can see the difference. So he shows that tiny little differences when extrapolated make massive differences. And so it forces the senior management team to think totally different about their numbers and worry about the small stuff, because most management don't, and they don't realize how those little small things make such a massive difference. So some really good stuff the way he does all that. But the bottom line is, like I said, his model is almost exactly the same as Dan Sullivan's model, which is that we're going to run masterminds and bring people together to teach them this stuff and how it works. And frankly, one person who's done exactly the same, because it works, we know it works, and we've seen it again and again, is David Dugan. David, like when I first met David, he hadn't yet set up any of his mastermind groups. He was pretty much working his stuff with KPI, and he was doing some stuff without us. But he basically set up exactly the same thing on his, which was basically, and it's in Australia, right? And he's done really well. He's turned this to multiple millions now as well, where he basically is like running his Elite 500 mastermind. He meets them every 3 months. He's charging them each, like, I think it's about $2,000 a month or something to be part of his program. He gives them workshops, he gives them experiences. They all get to meet each other. And then he just keeps on like multiplying it out. And he's partnered up with like lawyers, accountants to actually bring people on board to do all this stuff. But it just works, right? But it's because he's actually created that pathway as he goes as well. So all in a nutshell, if you take everything I just shared, and I'll just share all this stuff down here as well. There's a CFO scoreboard, definitely worth having a look at. And even like David's model and how he's done it. I totally get what you're saying, that like definitely doing the top level virtual CFO is a real key thing. But I would say that if you actually said, well, we've got level 1, which can be the micro degree. We've got level 2, right, which can be the mastermind, which is very similar to these masterminds. We've got level 3, which can be basically the much high level kind of like CFO service, right? So you've got those different elements. And then what you're doing is you're fundamentally giving people, the ability in each one of these different areas to be able to actually get themselves really set up with their finances and what they're doing. What I would do across this is I would be looking at this by taking one element. I think the fact that we talk about something like virtual CFO, totally, like, you've got that nailed, right? It's just getting that out there to the right people. But if you actually take that, that whole idea of what would I call it? I think if you take that whole idea that you're really providing, at this point, financial education, but you're providing to people that already are running their business or to their teams, right? So they're actually giving each of them a chance to really get much, much more clarity on how to be able to actually run their financials as they're going at each one of these different levels. And price-wise, you could say on this one like this, the Mike would agree. I mean, like this one here, the idea of there being an assessment, because I think your 7 leaders definitely, I know we've talked about this already, having the assessment on there. So people actually take it just exactly the same way that you've seen there. And then you could say, well, that's a free thing, which could then lead to the consultation, which you guys already have got set up to say, yeah, people can actually do a consultation for a couple $100, or you give them a special rate, which I think definitely makes sense to see if they're the right person, even to come into the mastermind. And Jeremy doesn't need to do all those conversations. Like, Deborah could do those conversations, but then that would then lead to the mastermind, where the mastermind could be something which is more like, if this virtual CFO is like at, $2,000 to $3,000 per month, right? Then this one could be more like, $1,000 per month, or even $800 per month, right? Just make it really simple and a way for you to test it out to see how it works to begin with. Then it makes it really super simple as you're getting going. And if I was you, I would take something which talks to the whole idea of financial literacy, because that's really what you're looking to create at the moment. And if I was to ask you guys for a second, if you were to say, if there was like 1 or 2 words that you would want people to be actually saying about your company or about your service, what would be those 1 or 2 words, right? And I'll ask you both, because you might have different words you want to use. Like if they would say, like, this company is this, right? Or this company is allowing me to do this. What would be the actual word that you would use that would make you feel really excited that they're actually describing what you're doing in that particular way? I'm going to ask you first, Jeremy. What would that be for you?
To get certainty on the future, to know the outcome of financial decisions before making them.
Okay, so it'll be about the future, right? Okay. Anything else?
It's a bit of a cliche, but to sleep at night.
Okay.
As
all
business
right.
owners, without worrying about the financials.
Okay. And then what would it be for you, Deborah?
I think that I have 2 answers based on whether you're a team member or the CFO or CEO. I think as the CEO, it would be just knowing that your company was secure. And
Okay.
I think team member, it would be about knowing that you had a competency that could make a company secure. So whether it was for that company or another company, that you could be a strong team member and really drive that.
How do you see security working into to the whole thing on growth?
Because I think if you don't have your cash flow secure, it makes it really hard to grow. You don't have the certainty that you've got the money where you need it, when you need it. And so it makes it hard to actually plan for growth. If every little obstacle becomes a massive obstacle, and it just makes it hard to actually know you're less predictable if you don't have the cash flow there. And so therefore your numbers show that to your investors or to your bank or to wherever you're getting your finance from at the time.
Right. Okay, got it. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna, okay, I got it. Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just give my immediate thing that comes to mind or just shows up in my mind as we're going through this, and then you guys can have a think about it and decide where you would go. But if it was me and I was taking this, I would be taking the whole idea of cash flow. I'd be taking the whole idea of capital value. I'd be taking the whole idea of like being able to sleep at night and have this ongoing financial flow that's getting created like in everything I'm doing. And I take the word future because you mentioned future. You mentioned and everything about being a virtual CFO is about the future as well, right? And if you actually, if I saw a company where that company was called Future Flow, and where I saw that basically the whole concept of future flow is that your value is in your future flow, right? It's like everything's in your future flow. It's like everything about the capital value of your business. We all know value, business is only as much as valuable as its future cash flow. So it's discounted future cash flows. So, and the idea of future flow also kind of flows into the fact that, everything you're doing is actually linking to the future as well. then I would then be looking at something like that. If you were to use a word like that or something like that, and say, well, if I knew that there was an organization which was called Future Flow, and I knew that was all about basically creating, security in your security and growth for your financial future, and I actually then had from that you actually had a future flow test, right? Which is basically to what extent are you actually set up to have secure flow or predictable flow in the future in terms of what you're creating, right? Within your business, if that you actually had in there as well. A future flow mastermind, right, which would actually allow people to actually see that they actually had a way to predict their future flow and how it links to their current flow, right? And then you would then have your virtual CFO, which would be one step up from future flow. But that would be like, if I saw something that was called future flow as opposed to decisions plus strategic, it would totally make a difference in the way I would be thinking about it, and it would create actually an imagery about everything that you're actually designing that people then really, really get as well. So I put it out there, right? You might take that, you might change it, but the whole point is you want to have something that links to that same thing. And for you guys to actually get a bottle of wine, sit down and spend the evening just kind of putting out post-it notes and putting out words and then saying, right, what actually then fits together and come up with something like that is definitely the way to do it. Then what I would do is I would then say then to work with Suraj on something, it should be for this middle one, because you can do the middle one, as we do, like we have a gem as a middle one where people can just actually join up, and Flow Consult, people just join up, where it actually has what people are doing within that first mastermind. I wouldn't start necessarily straight away with him to do that. I think you still need to have your first test case with a number of people becoming on board. Once you know it works well and you've got some testimonials, then do the online funnel, because you don't want to do an online funnel unless you've got already lots of good stories, because you're going to people that aren't even sure about it yet. And you want them to then actually become sure as they come on board, right? So that's what I would say is like really super important to make sure you do have a test case first. But once you've got an MVP that works, then go for this one here in terms of in terms of a mastermind that can lead into it. And you'd use this whole idea of a test and an assessment to actually link into this. Exactly the same as you saw with Strategic Coach, right? That would be the way to do it. Then this one here you can continue to do basically based on people that you invite up to that level. And then you, again, because that's the one that you're more restricted on timing wise. So, and again, I'd say the same for everyone in the same case as you are starting to level 3 people through, create a really, really solid pathway that can actually let people come through to it. I'm going to show you an example of this in a moment as we go through into, these steps here, right? So let me come to these ones here for a moment. And then I'm going to, like I said, spend a chunk of time with Scott on this one here so we can see how it all fits together. With Angie and David, what I'd say, which is really, really important, is you can't be thinking about just having one day in one and one day another. Like if I had to think like that, I'd never get anything done. It'd be impossible. I couldn't imagine it, right? Like trying to run all the different businesses and do all the coaching and mentoring and do everything that I do by somehow dividing it up like a day for each chunk. So be really clear about the difference of how you're actually coordinating your team and the flow of that team when it comes to basically blocks of, I would call it initiative, but another word for initiative is worry, which is like when you actually worry about stuff, when you actually do stuff or make things happen. Which is basically, or probably a better word is concern, like blocks of concern. It's like when you actually say this is a problem or this is something that needs to be solved, compared to blocks of activity, right? So like the difference of blocks of initiative and like when things get initiated and blocks of activity is blocks of initiative need to have kind of like a very, very clear vertical segmentation, right? Which basically means that it's when things basically go in parallel. Right. So, for example, like by having Mondays, which is my medal day, which is my finance days, it means there's a very clear vertical across all businesses. Then Monday is the only day I look at all the numbers. Right. So that by doing that, I have a finance meet, and I even have a finance meet where I bring the finance managers of all the different companies together. Like, we just did all end of month payments last week, and I had the Genius U, I had like Entrepreneurs Resource, I had Entrepreneurs Institute. If I had another 5 companies, I'd have them all there as well. And everyone's all coordinated. Everyone knows best practice. They're all working on it together. They know what we're paying, when we're paying, how we're doing all that stuff. If there's new change in the policies, they all know at the same time as well. So you don't need to have multiple meetings with everyone in different finance meetings in different places businesses all happens at one place. Similarly, when we're actually going through something like, like development work, we'll bring on the people that are relevant to that one in that vertical across all businesses, and everyone will then be able to focus at that and get that done. And it means everything can move in parallel without you having to kind of wait, like everyone's waiting for you, because it all happens in that one particular day. Similarly, on a second day, like, water day is when you're actually saying, right, this is when I look across everything. Am I on purpose? Is everything on purpose across everything? I look at your team charter, look at like, are we on track with everything in terms of like, are we missing the big picture stuff because we're solving the small stuff, right? And putting that time aside. You don't need a lot of time. Like if I take Mondays, my medal time on a Monday is a maximum of 2 hours. It's not like I spend the whole Monday on medal stuff. But I have my, finance meeting, right, which is going to be there like on that Monday, right? I have basically, my timing of when I meet up with Sandra, right, which is on a Monday, right, which is all my metal stuff, right, pretty much on that day, right? That's like 2 hours worth of stuff. The rest of the time, I'll be focusing at basically, in fact, I do a lot of my kind of metrics on on the different projects, right? So checking in with the different project leaders and different things that I'm interested in, but that will change over time. And if I have a meeting, if I have a speaking engagement on the Monday, that's great, right? It's like the whole Monday can be like an event. That's fine too. But I'll still make sure I actually have those sessions, even if it's in the morning or in the afternoon, like with the finance team, right? So it's actually knowing, okay, we've got metal on the Monday, water on the Tuesday. And I always, and I like, while I say to other people, hey, try something else out, I've yet to find someone who's actually figured out a better rhythm than the one we do, right? Where Monday is metal, which is all about the how. And then Tuesday is the water, which is all about the why, and then Wednesday is the wood, which is all about the what. And I just don't even bother about, hey, let's create this or create that if it's not a Wednesday. I'll put it in my diary to say, like on Wednesday I want to cover this particular thing, but it'll always be knowing that's going to happen. Fire is going to be the who on the Thursday, and then Friday is always going to be the when I go for the schedule. So I've got lots of stuff I need to schedule and talk to the team, but they know to talk to me about on the Friday, and that's when I have my meet on that as well. So having basically every day that you're blocking out, when am I focusing at the initiative side to do this, to say here's the creative part of what needs to be happening, and I'm going to have the conversations on that day, as opposed to metal and so on each day. You need to do that in terms of where you physically locate yourself. Then to say, here's when I'm going to spending more time with one company or with another company. Look for as many things you can do where you actually bring the people who actually have things in common together. So if we have like development work together, we do it all on the same day. When we go through our 3 I's to solve things, we'll do that on our Wednesday, which is the what day. And if we then say, hey, you know what? The stuff we're trying to solve in Entrepreneurs Institute, it actually requires some of the people in the Genius U team as well. We'll bring them into that meeting on that day, and we'll schedule it ahead of time so they're doing that too, so that I'm not basically someone. So at no point, whatever you do, if you've got multiple businesses, blue level, never be the bridge. Never be the one that is the one that has information that no one else has, which means that the only way for this person over here to know what's happening over here is you got to be the one that tells them. Right? So at yellow level, you're the bridge all the time, right? Yellow level, you know everything and no one else does. But if you're at that level of blue, it never works, because it means that you have to be everywhere. Whereas if you never have to be anywhere, because whatever needs to be done is other people in the team that are doing it, then you can show up wherever you need to show up. And if I don't show up for any meetings in a week, it's not like anything stops, because everyone's already got responsibilities. And the answer to that is always be, am I that person or am I not? Well, check it out at the end of every meeting. What are the actions that come off the meeting? And are you making sure that all those actions are not dependent on you? Because some people, they'll go into the meeting, it's like, yep, okay, we'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. And they just take all the actions, and then they're wondering why they're so busy. But if every meeting you go into, there's going to be actions off it, but they're all other people that are taking all the actions, and you're not taking any of them, right? That's your goal, right? So you actually say, right, who's going to do this, who's going to do this? You leave every meeting, and everyone's up with what they're doing, and your only job is next week to check in and see how they're doing on their actions, right? Did they do them? Did they not do them? But you're not the one having to do those things yourself. And then the goal is to say, who's the person that's checking in on those actions in the future as well, which is going to come back down to Scott's point. The reason he's got someone like Lyndon saying, well, what do you think our number one thing is that we're doing is, frankly, it's because Scott's most likely saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. And they're like, but I thought I was doing this instead. And so Lynn's like, well, you tell us what you want to do. And the best thing for Scott to do is like, no, you tell me, right? It's kind of like you tell me what it is that we're doing, and I'll tell you if I think that's the right thing or not. Or else it means that everyone's just, again, waiting for Scott to tell them what to do. But in your case, it's the same thing, Angie, like to say, how do I make sure that I'm getting the right people in place? And you'll see where the gaps are. Because if you're getting someone to do something, they're clearly not doing it, right? And we always have a green, yellow, and red light on everything we do, which basically means that if there's something that was meant to be done, it's a green light because the next week it's going to be done. If the next week it's not done, it becomes a yellow. right? Yellow basically means like we said we were going to get it done. We thought we'd be able to get it done. It didn't get done. So if it didn't get done, for the person who's actually owning it, what was the reason it didn't get done? They might say, well, it's for this reason, but I'm going to sort it out at this next level. Well, guess what? It still goes yellow. And by the next week, it's going to go and be done, and it's going to be off the line. But if it goes for another week after they've already had kind of one out, and now it's another week and they still haven't done it, it goes red. If it goes red, it kind of means, okay, you said it was going to get done. It still didn't get done. This is red light now, right? It's like 3 strikes and you're out. 3 strikes and clearly means you're not up for the job, or 3 strikes means you're not actually working it out in some particular way to get it done. And everyone, guess what, gets it done. Because if by that 3rd week it's still not done, you know the wrong person's in the wrong place doing the wrong job, right? Unless they say, no, it is going to get done, but here's why it got delayed. There's a real valid reason for it. And everyone goes, okay, we'll leave it yellow for another week, right? Or we might even say, well, it still should have been done, so it's still going to turn a red. Let's get it done by the week after. And then your job is just to be the traffic coordinator. And these traffic lights, they're all basically things that then actually can show up on one massive dashboard, and then you've got all the details there as well. And I'm going to show you how we do that with our Scrum stuff as we go as well. But that's the key. The difference of blocks of initiative is they're clear verticals. They happen in parallel. Generally, blocks of activity, right? These are clear horizontals, which means that they're kind of things that, it's not like, I can do this basically with all of my different companies at the same time. But it's like, this is something that actually kind of will work across the board. So like I have to be at an event, for example, and at that event it's horizontal across everything, right? Everyone's going to get involved on that one day to all be part of it, right? But it's time-based, right? With Anderson series, which means everyone's going to rely on everyone else to do it, but we actually have a beginning and end to that as well, right? So another way to think of this is think of blocks of initiative being almost like where we have a promotion, where we have a process, which means it's ongoing, right? So it's ongoing flow, ongoing rhythm, right? As opposed to this one here, which is more like a promotion, where I'll put myself somewhere specific for a period of time, which has basically got a beginning and end, right? It's like, yeah, we know when it starts, we know when it's finished, and it's over. I'm off to do something else. I know it's temporary, right? But I'll put myself there because it's where I want to be specifically for that thing that needs to be done. And it will always be a promotion, which is either one of the 3 E's. Either it will be to expand. I'm putting myself there to expand something, or to enhance, which means it's not leverage its value, or enjoy. I'm just doing it for fun, right? So it's one of those 3 things. But fundamentally, that is a really super important thing to interlink the 2 together. And everyone in the team is the same thing. They know what's temporary. They know what's permanent. They know what's in an ongoing rhythm. And they know what basically they're getting into to finish and then get out of it. And then it's done. And it's okay to be in a place where you have a really high workload for a few weeks, but you know it's going to be over because you set your timeframes to get it done as well. Now, if you do that in terms of like on Max's side, like what do you outsource, what do you not? This all comes down to basically, again, what are we trying to achieve as you go? So Sprints allows you to do this. I'm going to walk through just with Genius U how we implemented our sprints and how they work. So and I'll give you an example of what we're doing to World Game right now. So basically within Genius U, we actually first of all put this in here as part of our culture. We said in our culture, let's have a look here. Or this whole thing like we want global, entrepreneurial, natural. This is GENIUS. This is our culture here. But we actually walked through this like, natural, follow a clear rhythm. So we said, okay, we want to have a really annually, monthly, weekly, now daily rhythm and set ahead of time. It's really, really clear. And this is where it's actually all about basically setting up our mindset. I already went through the 3 I's with you guys before, but actually setting up the Scrum methodology, right? Which is basically using kind of what all the top tech companies already use to put sprints together, to design them out, to really make sure everything's now down into a very, very specific step. And any one of us building a technology company is definitely the way to go right now. But we link the whole thing together to our promotion plans, right? So we'll put a promotion plan together, which will then link to sprints. So I'll give you an example of exactly what that looks like right now, right? If we were to go to the promotion plan on the World Game. So this is where we said, right, the World Game is a existing like sprint we're doing right now, existing promotion. The way that the World Game works is, first of all, we start by getting everyone focused together, where we say, right, we're going to get all these different partnerships. We said we want to solve how we actually get all the partners working together. So this aligns all the activities of the EI and Genius U partnership teams into one promotion, brings all our activities together. It links to our bigger purpose, which is the whole concept of the World Game as well. And it reestablishes revenue streams across all of the things we're doing. So it's got money targets as well, right? Customer problem is basically our customers looking for a way to increase their profit and purpose. Company problems, multiple teams focusing on multiple groups of mentors while also having multiple product ranges. So they're all different areas. How do we actually bring them all into a series as opposed to all parallel, which is where they're at? Let's bring them all into one promotion that actually allows us to solve certain things like integrating B1G1, which we had a call with just Paul and Sami this morning. How do we integrate all that stuff? How do we make sure we have all the right commission structures? How do we make sure everyone's got the same onboarding process? Let's all work together in one team to do it. Solutions play the world game, right? We'll get everyone together. We'll play it as with Buckinghamshire Fuller. We'll launch it on the 10th of June in Brisbane. It'll be 6 months to the 70th anniversary of UN Human Rights, which is in 10th of December. And we'll basically have everyone play the game or come on it together. Micros everyone does will show how to use GeniusU to track their earnings and givings. We'll launch it just like EMC last year when we had 20,000 people join it. We'll aim to get 7,000 to start with, and we'll give everyone a whole pathway on how they'll actually join and become part of it, right? Now on the promotion side, I'll show you two sides. I'll show you first of all the promotion side, where we actually then put together, Michelle, we said, who's in charge of this? We said, well, here's the team. Like Michelle's leading it, so she's in head. We've got like Suraj, GeniusU, right? He's going to be in charge of Entrepreneur Leaders. Kathleen, GeniusU, in charge of Entrepreneur Leaders. Jess, Entrepreneurs Institute, in charge of event partners. Radka, one of our partners, coming on in charge of master trainers. Danny, like Entrepreneurs Institute, part of Global Partners. So it's cross-company that we're doing this. So we have everyone involved. We had basically Michelle, who basically set up, first of all, the World Game on Basecamp. So she said, okay, everyone, we're on. We set up a rhythm. Every Monday, we're meeting up at 2 o'clock. Right? We've got all these different people now all communicating with each other, all the key things, all who needs to do what off the back of it. So the whole thing's up and running. We put up a landing page, which looks like this. So on the landing page, people can already jump in and play the World Game, right? So here is the first landing page, pre-launch. You can come in and you can join. It's free to join. You can upgrade if you want to as well. You can tell us how you want to upgrade. And so off the back of this, linking it all together, here's the different steps you can take, free or join. We went out just at our EXE event, and then we're going out tomorrow with the big launch. We have a kind of like a pre-launch when we're going to get out people, and then we're going to go out to the main launch, right? So all of that is also on here, where we actually can see revenue targets. We can see the schedule of what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. We put all of this into one slide deck. So a slide deck looks like, so you can see here, the slide deck, where we set on the slide deck, okay, here's the World Game. Like, can we show on a very small number of slides, in this case there's 16 slides, the whole process of the World Game? Here's what it is. Here's how you play it. Here's more detail on Bucky and what he said about the World Game. Here's why you would want to join, right? 10 times your income, 10 times your impact. You can compete, you can collaborate. We're going to track people by city, by circles, your own global goals. Here's how we're going to keep score. We're going to use Genius Dollars as our own virtual currency. So anyone who actually puts products on there, they can earn virtual currency. Everyone who does activity on GeniusU can earn currency. Measure impacts. Here's how we're going to play. Here's the process. You join, you do the micro degree, you upgrade if you want to. And then 4 ways to play, depending on which one of these levels you're at, right? So we walked it through and said, here's how we do it. We use this for the team. We use this for the partners. We said, here's so everyone can see, here's the why, the what, the how, right? So it's all on here as well. Right, and then it goes through basically, and every time we've shared this, people have got, and we've only shared it 3 times so far in smaller groups, just to test what people thought and how they thought of it. Right, we gave them this link to go to. People then actually, if they got excited by this, they then basically filled it out. Here's the registration list as of today, before we've actually even done the pre-launch. So this is like a pre-launch. So you can see when we go in here onto Salesforce, that what happens is we track all the people that are coming through. And so let me just open it up again. Let me just get it. Here it is, the World Game. Okay. So we get a list of all the people that are registered, and you can see, so we've got 140 people already who've registered, and you can see for each person that registers, they're all wanting to play the game, but then also at what level. So some people say, I want to be part of Genius Entrepreneur Certification, right? I want to be part of the B1G1. I want to be Flow Consultant or whatever, like the different people that allow us then to follow up with them. Different for iLab, right? We have this also for people who want to be event partners. City leaders, right? We've got people already who want to be city leaders in Preston, Singapore, Manchester, Warsaw, Vilnius, Wellington, Sydney, Bournemouth, Croydon, San Jose. Like, these are all over the place already, and it's really just before we've even got started. So we know this is going to really take off. And on the marketing side, we've got all these different people that are wanting to do stuff with us already. But what we basically then did was said we need to actually match this on the development side, because a lot of development work to do as well. So the first step on the development side is we do the same thing. We put it on slides. So here's our slides for the development side. We say, this is just internal. So it's only for the people internally who see this. Development plan. So put a plan together for the year, right? So basically, what's the summary of the plan? Who are our avatars? Everything's based on the same 4 people you saw in the marketing plan. each one of them are going to require certain things in order for them to actually be able to play the game or even to use all these tools. So we have in here, like partner Priscilla, here's what she wants to be able to do. So these are called stories. So within Scrum, they're going to have basic stories. And there's a good book if you haven't read it yet, which I recommend even if you're not doing tech stuff, right? Which is the Scrum doing twice. I know I recommended this to you guys before to read as well. But basically, this is from the inventor of Scrum, right? Jeff Sutherland. So this one here basically goes through what are the stories that someone says, I have an exciting way to do this. I have a simple way to do this. Like, I want to be able to do these things. That's the outcome of what we're trying to create, right? So at every level we do that, and then we actually then break that down into our sprints, whereas 2 weeks to actually deliver on a certain number of the project pieces that we want to do. And we've got every one of these sprints that are in here. So we can actually go through and say, right, with the world game, we have got basically to achieve all of this 3 sprints, which is our 6th, 7th, and 8th sprint of the year. We want to have mentors using all of our information on there. We want to have B1, G1, and Genius Dollars integrated. We have an onboarding and micro degree in place for the big launch. And so the whole development team then focuses at these 3 things together, or together at the same time. We have a meeting on the Monday when we brief them on it. We don't use this as the base. This base here explains the detail of what this means. This sprint means we're going to be able to do these certain things. So we take these basic things and we take it from this high level plan, and the system we use is Confluence, right? So this is what Confluence looks like. It's part of Atlassian, right? So they've used all these agile tools now. This allows me to map it out with the team. So I can go to, let's say, for example, this one here, which is our sprint 5. I can say, here's what's going to happen, the goals, the upgrades, the store, everything like that. There's a video that I put in, which is what the team wants to see of what's the vision. So we call them vision videos. Here's what I want to see the whole system be able to do. And it's going to be able to do these particular things. Then we break it down and we say, right, user story, right? As a mentor leader, I want to see like every one of these user stories are in here. And you can see each one of them as you go down. I'll make it a bit bigger here. But each one as it goes down actually goes into the detail, where on the one hand, it will say something like, as a mentor, I want to be able to see a list of my circle members with a link to their profile and dashboard that I can sort by location, but most active on GeniusU or most active in my circle. This then leads to basically this here, which is the design. So our designer, SY, has put this design together where she's interpreted what I've said, and she's actually said, well, let's put a wireframe together where, like, based on what we just had there, here's what it's going to look like, right? Here's the mental dashboard. Here's circles. I want to see exactly what he said, like what's the stats, how much has changed by last month, last year, or time, like what if, like for each event, how much money you got generated by all my events. I want to be able to view all my events to see them all as well. If I click on view all, I'm going to see all my events, how many more people came on board, how many visits, how many interactions. I want to see all that as well. So she's wide-framed the whole thing out. And that's like the second level of Confluence, but links go back to Confluence as well, right? So it's all on there. And then if I go back to, let me just go back to where we were on Confluence. Oops, I think that was the first one on Confluence. Okay, I'll find it again. I think I closed it. Okay, so it's here. If I then basically say, well, how well is that tracking? Then we use Jira to actually track it. So on Jira, we can look at any particular project, like, a launch of a particular, program or something like that. And we can see, on here on Kanban board, what needs to be done, what's in progress, what's for review, what's gone live, what's completed, right? So you can see all the pieces across the board on any one of these. And on Confluence, so this is Jira. And on Confluence, if I go back to the Confluence here, if I'm on one of these, I can see not just the wireframe, I can actually see where there is a particular Jira ticket, which I think we started doing from this like sprint 6. I can go down and I can see, it's not on this one yet. I think it must be on these ones. So as soon as it goes into development, then any particular, this one's not one of them. Any particular thing that's here will have Tom, who, as you can see here, will then put the notes down. Oops, it's on this side, where I can actually go and see, this one's done, right? I can actually see the Jira ticket in Jira on this one here, where you can see exactly what he wrote, what had to be done, who did it, like when it was completed, right? And then you can actually go and actually see the end point of it as well, right? So this basically makes the whole thing so rock solid, because it means at any one point, you've got a very, very clear line all the way through from what is it we want to get achieved, through to when's it getting achieved by, through to it's actually getting done. And you can then do this across multiple teams. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges, is that for, at the moment, unless you're doing this, you can't have a remote team very easily. But right now we have got Jan doing this. He's in, where's Jan? Jan's in Ukraine. So he's in Ukraine. we've got Tom, who's based in London right now. We've got SY, who's based in Germany, right? So like there's not any one person in our team who's in the same location. They're all over the world, but they're all basically running through this together. And every single day they're having a stand-up meeting where they're just checking in on are we on track or not? We've got 12 tickets to do. Have we hit those 12 tickets or not? Is the story actually complete? And then they do a presentation every following Monday to say, here's what we actually completed on. That can then go live, and then it goes live. So the whole thing is just this ongoing flow, which then works really, really well. And then at any one point, when I don't have to worry about any of this detail, to be honest, I'm basically just having the conversation at the high level together with the team to say, right, are we getting it done? Now, to the whole point that Max said, should he be the Scrum Master? Definitely not. Tom is our Scrum Master, who's the person who needs to be someone from a technical point of view that's actually going to track the team. There may be someone in your development team that can be the Scrum Master, but the Scrum Master definitely needs to be the key person that is in the team. Your designer could be who does the wireframes. That could be someone who's outside the team, right? You can contract that person. Your developers definitely can be outsourced. All of our developers are outsourced now, all our best guys. And the way we got them all was through Upwork. So we went to Upwork, we went and actually put down some ads specifically for people that were good with Ruby on Rails. And we got lots of people that applied. We then basically tested them to find out how good they are. We chose the best people, and then we then had our key team. So key team always within your development team is going to be always to make sure that you have one person, let me close this one for now, that we have one person who is your Scrum Master, who is the most important person, because that person, fundamentally, when you get bigger, you're going to need a product manager as well, who is, I'm doing some of the job at the moment of the product manager because I'm getting very, very involved in the development side. But a product manager is the one who would actually be the one who would oversee the client and everything that they're doing. Then you'd have the Scrum Master. So I don't think you need a product manager right now. You could be the product manager to say, what do I want this product to do? Here's the kind of stories that I'm creating. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do this. The Scrum Master is the tech guy who knows how long it takes to do things and then can actually work with the team to make that happen. And then you have your designer who needs to be able to do the wireframes. And then you've got your coders who are going to do the coding, right? They're your engineers. And you can outsource this one. You want the first two to be in-house. And the first thing is say, who is going to be my Scrum Master? And it could actually be one of your existing developers who could step up to that. That's why I'm with Tom. Tom originally was a developer, and now he's stepped into the Scrum Master role, and he's loving it because he now can take on a more strategic role, and he knows how all the pieces fit together as you go as well, right? That's the most important thing before you start getting into anything more. And so I think you can definitely outsource and go into Upwork and find the right people that you need. On the answer on the $2 million valuation, what I'd say around that is I really believe that by you looking at your pathway and saying, well, if we're right now, doing basically, a couple of $1 million in revenues, we're doing, like 20% profit or whatever it is. And you say, okay, well, actually, like at this point already, if we were going to actually really treat this like a tech company and say this is a tech company that could grow, and say, well, then on this base, if we're actually saying just as rule of thumb, if it's a $2 million value, if it's $2 million in revenues today, and we're actually then going to build this up to what we think could be, a 10 times growth, but let's just call it like $10 million by next year, and more like $30 million a year after, right? Then you could actually say, well, on this basis, $2 million revenue, we're looking at a valuation of around about $20 million. Someone bringing in $2 million is about 10% of the business at this point, right? Someone will probably negotiate for more. They'll want 20% or something, but that's the rough number of where you're at. When we got to net of like over $2 million, we're already at valuation of 20 million. I'll give you our pitch decks that we have of how we went out to raise the funding, because we had them on earlier Sapphire calls as well. So you can actually then use that and say, right, I'm going to put together a really clear pitch deck, which is here's basically the pathway we're going forward. So we had the conversation about, what do we want, like, the big goal of it to be. When you look at something like the pitch deck for, oops, let me just get it out. Hello, let me try again. My search has gone really crazy on my Mac. I think it's time for me to get a new match here. Okay, here we go. So something like this, like it makes you have to force yourself through to think, well, what's this whole thing going to look like in the future? So knowing what's the problem and the solution, which you've got really, really clear on your side, then saying what's the current growth and future growth, right? So if you say, well, here's what the growth has been, here's what it's going to be, right? It's like, and just putting a number right down actually really helps you to really think, what's my future flow? What's it going to look like? Then from there, like anything about the current, like the experience of current reach business model, who's in the management team. Right? So you're mapping out the different kind of fundamental, what makes us special, what's our big goal of what we're trying to achieve? What is our mission? Right? Once you pull this together, then people can see, oh, not only how well you've done so far, but where you're planning to go with or without them. And then from that point of view, that's when they say, well, then I'll come on board and actually be part of this as well. Right? These become really, really valuable templates to start using, where you're not then depending on them to tell you how to do things. You're saying, here's where I'm going. And we want money to actually go to this level. And we'll share all this stuff with you about how we're raising the funding at the moment for Genius U. But off the back of it, these become the most important documents. You'll notice that in everything that I've talked about so far, whether it is the promotion plan, World Game, we have a slide deck. Whether it is the development plan, internal, we have a slide deck. Whether it's investors, we have a slide deck. And like each one, it's like, are we articulating clearly enough where we're at and where we're going in such a way that we've made the case for anyone to really get it, that they go, I get this, and now I'm on this path with you. If you don't have that predictability or that certainty, here's where we're going, then everyone else won't fall in lockstep behind you to make it happen as well, right? So like that's the critical part to do it. Then you can then say, and this is how we justify evaluation, or this is how we're going to develop our development plan off the back of that as well. So super duper key thing here is, I know you guys know this, right? Think it, do it, review it, right? It's like, just like get it down, but get it down in a way that becomes super duper clear to you. And the process of doing that makes all the difference in each one of these different areas as well. So on this whole thing on top 3 KPIs, before I just get Scott, and I talked to Scott a bit about this, and we're going to go a bit over in this call if you guys are okay with that, because it took a little bit longer going through that than I was planning. But what I want to do, if you're okay with doing this, is like spend about 10, 15 minutes with Scott walking through like what are the kind of key people and what are the key KPIs you believe they need. And when let me share with you, first of all, before I go through that, one of the most important things is the fact that whatever you come up with, a really important part is how you get the team to come up with this as well. I'll tell you how we do this. If I go to something like our Genius U team charter, and we have this for all of our teams, we walk through together, first of all, who's in charge of what, like who's taking ownership in which particular area. So we have that already in here, which then links to the key promotions. So everyone already is really clear, what are my conditions of success? Like who's in charge of the World Tech EdTech platform? That's Anthony in charge of that. Who's in charge of on-purpose entrepreneurs delivering to the UN goals? That's Suraj. Who's in charge of the world's leading learners partner community? That's Michelle. So everyone's really, really clear. Even I've got an ownership here on the investors. That's me. So every one of us has an ownership in a particular area. And then off the back of that ownership and off the back of what we're looking to achieve financially, right? Like in terms of our forecasts, and also based on the promotions that we're actually going to run, and everyone actually going to be involved in one part of that promotion as well. And that all linking back to our flight deck. Based on all of that, we then get every one person to put together their own personal compass. So this is what a personal compass looks like. Here's Suraj's, right? This is his ownership, right? He's put these pictures in. He's done all of this. Here's his purpose. Here's his profile. Here's what his values are. He's got very, very clearly, here are my roles and responsibilities for the next quarter. Here are my top priorities. I'm going to continue to grow Genius U services by engaging top partners. I'm going to focus on delivering results to services and clients. I'm going to launch a leader funnel for evergreen campaign. He's got metrics across each one of them. He defines what those metrics are to actually achieve on that as well. He also goes through and says, here's what I said I was going to do in the first quarter. Here's what I actually did or didn't do, right? And so actually reports on that as well. He has his top milestones. What did he achieve in the first milestone? Grew online sales to 120,000 per month, right? Generated 50,000 a month in training, supported completion of Series A round. Number 2, achieved, so these are his 3 milestones that link to his priorities, right? So he's got his milestones and he's got his wins and challenges. Like what were the toughest things that he needs help on? What are the wins that he had as well, right? And stuff like, going off on a family holiday, right, was one of his wins, right? So everyone's integrating this to their entire life. And overall, what's the big learnings, big goals going ahead, right? Minimize times on calls, build robust services, shift the team focus. He's owning it 100%. So at any one point, if I'm telling Suraj to do something that does not sit inside what I've already reviewed and seen for the whole quarter, if I suddenly go to Suraj and say, Suraj, I need to do this, he is totally entitled to come back to me and say, hey, Roger, it just isn't part of my plan this quarter. Come back next quarter, right? I've already told you I'm doing this stuff. And I'm going to say, fair call, right? Like he's defined his role, and it actually allows us, with everyone having defined their role, to know for the whole quarter what we're all going to do together, right? So like he would never come to me to say, Roger, what should I be measuring? Or Roger, what should my top priorities be? Because the moment he's doing that, guess whose problem it becomes? It becomes my problem for me to tell him what to do. Which is why, while I can walk through with you, what the top KPIs should be for your team, the last thing you should be doing is going back to them to tell them what the KPI should be. They should be telling you what the KPI should be based on their ownerships and based on what they're in charge of. The most important thing is what have you designed them in terms of what they actually each are meant to be owning in order to give you those KPIs in the first place. So I just wanted to give you that as a precursor. But like, Scott, I'd love you to walk through with your top senior level, like those 7 top people, just from what you heard from me, what each of them actually own. And then we can go through a bit around what should be the kind of KPIs they should be giving you based on what they're owning right now. Hey, Scott.
So, funny enough, while you were talking, I was writing it down.
Okay, cool.
Okay, in no particular order. So, Jaco is effectively strategic operations. So, what he's owning is our scalable systems. So, Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, all the systems that you need to be able to scale, basically.
Okay.
Then Michiel owns the supply side. So having at least 2 live properties per country live at any one time. So, at the end of the day, the due diligence, the quality of the product, the partner, everything. And that leads, then Lyndon effectively is doing the PMO role. So that's the coordination between the different teams, including the country CEOs, which is the demand side. So it's sales, basically.
Yeah.
Gavin is the CTO, so the technology and the platform. And Lo is the basically CFO, so all the finance and compliance.
Okay. So at the moment, yeah, is that it? The 5?
I'm just double checking. I think I've got it. Lo, Jaco, Lyndon, Gavin. Yeah, that's it.
And then how would you define yourself in there?
Funding. So funding, strategy, and team.
Okay. All right. Okay. And where would you say at the moment, like, because you said, hey, I want there to be revenue focus. If that is Lyndon's job right now, where do you think it's breaking down?
Yeah, good question. As in terms of the company. So the challenges in terms of the company, there's been quite a lot of finger pointing between the country CEOs, whose role it is, etc. So what we got very clear on only recently in the last 2 months was that it's the country CEOs accountability, with Lyndon effectively holding the country CEOs accountable.
And why do you think the CEOs themselves are not able to generate the demand you want?
This is like online feedback and nasty with your tutor. The reason being is that our systems aren't in place. So when I get to the front line, they can't get Salesforce to work. They can't pull the database. Like just the report you just pulled now on the World Game on I don't know how many you said signed up, 174 where they were. It's not easy for them. So I think we've got to systemize all the systems so that they can actually do stuff. That's the one thing. And then the other thing, there's still too many top-down controls. So whatever it is, but there are too many controls versus giving them the freedom to run at the front line.
And let me ask you, when you are when you're having these guys connect with each other, do they like at what point in a particular week would Lyndon and the country CEOs be speaking, for example, to Gavin and the tech platform?
Sure. I don't know all the answers to this. So Kevin, so Lyndon's running a bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks PMO with every country CEO.
Yes.
And I'm not actually sure whether they're invited to. It's every 2 weeks we do a demo on the tech development and what's happening. But I don't think there's a planned rhythm where they're actually getting involved with country CEOs. I could be wrong, but I'm not aware.
Yeah. So the missing bits, which is why it's really difficult for them to actually move forward, is at the moment your entire business is run kind of like the old-fashioned way, which is fundamentally in series, right? So when things are run in series, everyone blames everyone, right? Because basically tech guys say, well, if we had more money, we'd be fine, but we don't have more money because we don't have more revenue coming through the platform. And you're saying, well, I can't raise money if there isn't more revenue coming from the platform, so put more revenue in the platform. And then like the country CEOs are saying, well, we can't put more revenue in the platform because there aren't enough product or because the system's not easy to use. And everyone just blames everyone. I mean, it just goes round and round in circles, right? And in the past, that used to work because everyone sat in one office and everyone basically every day just kind of like, said, well, what's wrong? And then let's fix it. And everyone's moving slow enough. Today, things are moving too quickly to do that. And so this is where it's about how do we get things to run in series, right? When you're running in series, right, then basically everyone...
Run in parallel, you mean?
Sorry, parallel, yeah. So when everything is running parallel, right, then everyone basically owns their part of the solution, right? Because there's consequences of not doing it. So what that looks like is, let's say, for example, what we're doing with the World Game, we're bringing, like in the past, and we're doing it for different parts of the business, but if you were to say, right, we're actually going to run a promotion, right, over the next 3 months, which is actually to deliver X number of people who are going to be coming on board the platform to deliver the X amount of revenue going into these particular projects. And that's going to be the promotion plan. And then you actually have a weekly promotion meeting, which is cross-department. It's when the tech person comes on board and says, what do I need to do to make this happen? It's when the sales, the country CEOs are on to say, what are they going to do in terms of their targets? It's when you've got basically Yakko coming on board to do the scalable system side. It only needs to be a 30-minute meeting. But with everyone's coming on board and you're running things by milestone, everything gets done because no one's going to show up like a week or 2 weeks later on red lights saying, well, I said I was going to get this done for you guys. And everyone knows what the priorities are because it's much, much more important to know what they are at that point as well to actually achieve that particular thing you're looking to achieve because they're all on together. Otherwise, what happens is the country CEO says, well, I know the tech platform's not ready. They say it's going to be ready in 2 months' time. I guess I'll just wait, right? And then it's like, but you have sales to make. It's like, yeah, but I can't make them because of this. Like they're giving themselves excuses because you don't have that in place. So that's why everything running by promotion means that things get done. The World Game will get done. When we decided to redo the event stuff all just got revamped, but it brought everyone together from how we're going to do the payment system through to how we're going to fill up the room, through to how we're going to make sure that the actual tech app, the event app worked. All that stuff, they were all on it together and they felt like one team. So everyone was in it, a feeling of the team together is to get things done. Doing one big promotion doesn't work because then if that's not working, nothing works. Doing promotions in parallel, where a number of people come on board onto one promotion, and then there might be a different one. Like you might say, right, we're going to have one promotion which is specifically around, these, like around really building the European market, right? So the UK GM and the Europe GM or whatever will be on that call, and we're actually going to get them to focus at getting people on board specifically for these projects here, and we're going to make that work. Or we're going to get focused at Asia, focusing at Wealthy Coin, and then that's going to work. So you actually have multiple promotions, as you've seen we've done multiple promotions. And you'll have some of these guys who'll be on multiple calls, but each one they need to deliver certain things to, and there's a consequence of not delivering them at that point as well. Then you've then got basically the ability for each person to then actually deliver, and there's consequence to not deliver. Whereas at the moment, everyone's working at different time frames. So it's like one single lane where everyone's in series and there's a traffic jam. And there's probably the tech side that's a traffic jam right now. But they probably think you're the traffic jam because you're not giving them enough money to do the tech stuff, which is the typical thing that happens in a lot of tech companies that are just in series, which is why parallel is about being much more nimble and letting every part of it grow without you having to get any extra funding. It can still grow and do its own thing anyway. So first of all, just before we go into KPIs, does that make sense to you as like the importance of knowing what rhythm people are getting together and having consequence for getting stuff done in?
Yeah, look, it's completely enlightening. The only little voice in the back of my head is I just wish I could implement this in the next week. And I for some reason, it makes so much sense in theory, but it's so difficult to execute in practice. And I'm just sort of sitting here thinking, this is exactly what I want. I need to get us all to watch this video 47 times and just do it. But yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's exactly what we need to do.
The key always is to lead by example by creating one small team in one small area. That's the first thing always, right? You don't have to try and get everyone to do it all at once because you can't move everyone and shift it all at once. But you can start by saying, okay, what would be a really critical key area, which is one of the most important areas that I want everyone to be really focused at, that I can actually create a promotion plan around, and then really focus that area. Like without just like disturbing the fact that there are some things that are working, right? There's people coming on the system, there's stuff already happening, but it's like that one thing to say, right, if we were, and for me, I really believe that in your case, it's not about trying to get everyone to do everything. It's about you actually saying, what's the real multipliable model that we're really going to use to really grow what we're doing, right? And you choosing, like if you were to choose one area where you think the demand side could grow the most effectively outside of South Africa, which country would you choose at the moment?
There's two parts to that. One is America.
Okay.
And the second one is actually right now it's re-engaging with the clients I've had for 15 years. So actually having a proper promotion plan to re-engage, bring them back on. You know, someone bought a house in London 10 years ago. It's more than doubled in value. You know, why are they not on the platform? Why don't they know us implicitly? You know, but it's that takes a proper promotion. You don't just send them an email and hope it happens.
Yeah. Let's say you did something like that, for example, right? And let's say you actually said, okay, we really want to get into basically creating a cross department team that can deliver results in a particular area. Okay. You got to re-engage in a warm list, which could be one thing you could do. But I would actually advise that the really biggest thing you're looking for here, I mean, that could be one that actually is kind of a magnified strategy because it gives you kind of quick results, right? Because they're warm. But there's a second element to this, which is really what's the multiplier, which you want to be testing, which is the thing that will be most likely to bring you in funding. Because people say, oh my God, you went to basically, you know, a core group of people and you warmed them up to the level where they actually all became investors in you and they all grew. That actually is much more valuable in the long term because that's the missing piece. Too many people will look at your company at the moment and say, hey, it's just you basically going to a bunch of people you know, getting them sold into developments the way you used to do it before. You just happen to be doing it through this platform called Wealth Migrate right now. But that doesn't prove that Wealth Migrate can actually go global by having strangers meet up with developers that don't even know you and find themselves on your platform, which is where the real value of it is. It's like Airbnb starting by basically just having their own hotels and putting them on Airbnb. Like they say, that's not actually proven that you can actually grow yet. So you're still missing that proven link because you're using the old traditional sales and supply model of developments. Which is why I always said to you before, until you break up IPS separately from Wealth Migrate, as opposed to making kind of Wealth Migrate the wrapping around IPS, until you separate them out and actually have a promotion plan separately, which brings people in, builds a community, gets them on board, and then after they're on board, then they start investing in cool things. Until you have that multiplier, people aren't going to believe that this is something that actually can exponentially grow 100 times bigger, no matter how much you kind of show you're actually bringing in the business and making it work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can do both together, by the way. You can do both. You can say, right, we're going to go out there and we're actually going to re-engage our warm list. And we're also going to create this is where we talk about objectives, right? We say, right, we're actually going to take a number of objectives, which are our development objectives, right? Our development objectives we're going to re-engage our warm list. We're going to basically create a multiplier, which basically allows us to see how we go from basically a newbie through to investor on our platform. Right, and then we can actually say development is also we're going to actually have a team that is promotion focused, so that they're actually getting stuff done. Right, and so that's good development stuff. Right, and you say what's the financial objectives? And you say right, we're going to have a financial objective, which is that we're going to basically kind of like raise $2 million off the back of this for projects. Right, we're going to basically have 1,000 new people who are going to be members on our platform. We're going to have 2 new developments, which aren't even ours, which are going to be basically starting like these are just made up numbers, but basically you get the idea. You're setting numbers of what this is actually going to allow you to then do in terms of value of the system. And then you then say, okay, well, who do we need to actually put a plan like this together and work with? It's like, well, we're going to need, Yako on the scalable system side to work on some of this. We're going to have, Lo to make sure we've got numbers on this. We're going to have not all the country CEOs, but maybe 1 or 2 of them involved. So the rest can keep on doing what they're doing for Lyndon. Lyndon should be on that call as well to see how we're doing this and bring it all together. We're going to have a time frame to make it all happen by. Everyone's going to know why can't we do this? Oh, because the system has this issue. Well, then why don't we do this with the system? It's like, well, because when we go out and invite people in, they don't actually have a clear value of what they're going to get when they haven't even decided what they're going to invest in yet. Well, then let's actually put these education programs in to make them have that, right? You'll work it out when you're actually saying, if we had to do this from beginning to end and treat it almost like a startup within a startup, and actually get these things done so that we end up with a provable model, we end up with more money that's coming in, we end up with basically a team that actually gets, by working together, we can solve things as opposed to just think it's someone else's fault, and all of it all comes together, then the team actually then starts working together really well. And that's exactly, I mean, you see us doing that all the time, and the things that we do is building that plan and building it that way. Because if you just give everyone KPIs, and by the way, I'd still go back to someone like Lyndon, who's overseeing things, and saying, use these templates and saying, hey, everyone put together your own KPIs. What do you think you're tracking at the moment? So you still get that from them as to what they think. And then that will expose to you where the big gaps are. And even on these calls, bring that back to the next call, right? Or in 2 calls time. And we can walk through that and say, here's where the big gaps are and all of that. But that's still assuming that everyone already is working as part of an exponential business, which I don't think you have. Because in an exponential business, what you would really have, we're talking supply side, demand side, is all basically talking about what the different roles would be if you are a development company, which you are, but you want to be a tech platform, right? So you say, okay, well, then we need to have someone who's going to look after the community, right? So who's head of community, which basically are the people that are all the ones that are coming on board for free, right, and being part of this community. Who are the people who are actually going to be looking after, our clients, which are all the people that actually are coming on board, who are the investors that want to be investors on this platform and are now starting to actually buy into this platform. Who are the people looking after our developers, right? The ones that are actually looking, not what Makhil's doing, which is just going out and looking for developments, but the developers themselves that are actually coming on your platform, right? So they actually are providing, like their details on the platform. Who's the person then who's looking after your tech? Not 2 people, not Yako and Lo separately, but just one on the tech side, right? Which is actually allowing the tech side to grow, right? And then who's the person who's looking after your team? And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a different team that actually is. So this is the scalable tech company as opposed to the development company. And at the moment, you kind of got the 2 mixed together. But as a result of it, Gab, like Makhil isn't spending a lot of time going out getting 500 developers to use your system, or Lyndon isn't spending lots of time getting out, getting a whole bunch of people into a community that then actually want to be a part of this and might take them 2 or 3 months before they invest something. He's looking for people to invest today based on a particular project of some sort, and that's a whole different deal from where you're at right now. If anything, you might have a final person who's kind of like your VIP clients, which is like your wealth. Your wealth partners and so on, which are basically more your kind of top level, which is kind of where you sit anyway. But you're separating out like the really scalable part and how you build that. Again, like I said, once you've actually gone through and got everyone to put down what they think their KPIs are, or getting Linda to tell what he thinks everyone's KPIs should be, and you match it against it, it will become really evident to you that what they're tracking their KPIs. Like how does Lyndon's team, like on a country COO, what is their actual goal per month in terms of new community members? What's their goal per month in terms of new investors who have not yet invested? What's their goal every month of those people who were not invested, who are now invested, and the money they're investing? Like, they're different metrics than what they actually will give you right now. But if you just told them tomorrow, hey, you got to go out and build community, they're going to go, I didn't even know how to do that. Like, what does that even mean? Right? There's no even place for someone to just join a community within Wealth Migrate. And they'd be right. They wouldn't be at this point. And you go, yeah, good point. So you can't just go and tell them that's what they should do. You need to actually say, how do we build a promotion plan that actually means that we will build a community and that we will put these things together? And if you're not ready to actually separate out the team into the development team and the tech team or the platform team, and I think you should do that. But if there's political reasons to not be able to do that at this point, at least create your skunk works, for the one that's going to actually allow you to really multiply out the tech side, to say this actually shows the multiplier for the tech company, separate from everything else that's happening. We can take 1,000 strangers, we can get them on the system, we can get 100 of them to become investors, we can then turn over $1 million, right? Like, people go, oh, then that's your multiplier. Cool. Let's go out and do that 100 times over, right? That's what they want to see, much more than, look, we just found another development and we just wanted to fund it, right? Because that's not actually the multiplier that you're looking for in the first place, but it's what most of these people are focusing at right now. So that's what I would say. It's like, hopefully, just from what I shared, you can already be just saying, well, I don't have to take everyone. I'll take the people that really get it, and I'll just create one of these promotion plans off the back of that. And of course, you've got Suraj on your team that can work with you as well. He knows this back to front, right? So he can also say, well, here, like when you say, here's a promotion plan, Suraj, he'll go, nah, it's still missing these bits or so on. He knows what that looks like already. But you get that core team together, and then you say, right, let's deliver this off the back of it. When people see the result of that, then they're actually going to say, well, we should be doing this as well, right? And then slowly, bit by bit, the other bits of the company then come on board, working off the same basis as well. That's the way I would do it. Does that make sense?
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I'm going to stop now. I know I went over time on this one, but I did want to cover all those different points. I want to give everyone a chance to just share out of everything I went through, whatever's biggest takeaway, biggest action you can take from this call. And I'm going to start with Jeremy and Deborah.
Refocusing on the customer avatar. So I've got a lot of clarity around that now, and then how the different products fit in with that. And then even though we're actually, at the moment, we're in transition from a business with team into just ourselves before we build team again, find the Scrum and everything about team really interesting, and so parking that away for when we need it. Yeah,
awesome. Very cool. And how about for you, Deborah?
I think for me, it's the distinction between the magnify and multiply in terms of being a mechanic, where it's about my skills being really used for helping somebody else build their business as opposed to building our own business. So it's kind of that working out where the best fit is and what the role is and what do I need to do next.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the distinction for me.
One thing I would say for the two of you, which I think might really help during this shift time as well, is to identify for the two of you, who is your supporter deal maker? Like, who's your Blaze that's going to come and work with you guys? Because that's what you need. Because the two of you are internalizing a lot. You're figuring out lots of stuff that you want to do and so on. But getting out to the people is where, but neither of you are like, okay, someone else can go do that sometime, right? But actually having someone that's out there every day, just making the calls and seeing people and so on, and they'll be in the community somewhere. But go identify that person and get them on board in your team, and then you'll find the dynamic actually shifts, because then you're going to see a much, much closer market interface with the customers you want to be working with as well. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, Scott, I'm going to come back to you for biggest thing.
No, it's just it's clear for me to get back in the rhythm. Well, not back in the rhythm, but to really focus on the rhythm. So in terms of that process, and I've got two quick questions for you. One is those templates, your product pathways, etc. Is that stuff that you've shared stuff with me before, PDFs and stuff, but is that stuff that I can actually take and almost use? I've got so much stuff from you. I know it sounds silly, but I've got so much stuff from you, like promotion plans from 3 years ago. Now I see you do it on PowerPoints. Like, where's the latest sort of best practice stuff that I can go and sort of use that and almost, like you said, create that small project team and use that as a case study?
Yeah. So with that, so there is a template actually using all of those different things. So like when you saw Jeremy, when he was showing his team charter, he would just usually use the same template basically, right? So that template's there. So I'll give you a link to that same template. Yeah, it's
We lost Roger.
He's doing the frozen face. It's definitely him. Hey, Ange, I'm wearing your jacket.
Deb, you look gorgeous as always.
It's keeping me warm. I'm freezing.
Yeah, looks like Roger has dropped off, guys, at the very end.
I think
just on the final sharings, I'm sure. The internet in Vienna.
Vienna, right. Okay.
Well, actually, should be a very fancy and good internet in Vienna, right? Because it doesn't seem to be working.
It was terrible the other day in Prague.
Yeah.
He had a lot of trouble.
Well, I don't know.
Can I ask quickly? I mean, this whole call has been a whole bunch of things that were really valuable here. Is there any chance that we can get the recording today? I've actually got a lead meeting tomorrow, and I want to share this with a couple of people, particularly the last bit that we spoke about.
Yeah, sure. Like what I can do, I can first send the Zoom link where you can download the call, right? Like 1 hour after the call, once it's been processed, and then it usually takes some time to upload to YouTube, and all sorts of things go wrong there. But I can immediately get you the Zoom link, so you can download it.
If you can do that, that's wonderful. Then I can show. So I've got a couple of meetings tomorrow. I want to actually share it with people.
Yep, sure. So I'll do that sort of in an hour and a half from now. So. Yeah.
Oh, sorry guys. Sorry. The Wi-Fi dropped. Okay, I'm back.
So Roger, you're telling us where to get that template.
Yeah. So I'll send you the link to the template there.
Cool. But yeah,
did you say you had a second question?
No,
Okay.
it got answered. It was the recording while you were off.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, let's come over to Angie David.
I loved going through the financial exercise. So I've worked out the exact figures now. So it was $500 out, but that's neither here nor there. So that's great.
All right.
And I loved that whole blocks of initiative, stroke concern, and blocks of activity. That's definitely got to be a focus of mine. And getting smarter on rhythm, etc. And David's too. So
yeah. Anything you wanted to add, David?
Thank you. Amazing.
Okay, awesome. David's good. All right. David's a silent partner. You can tell. Literally, he doesn't say anything. He just listens. Okay. All right. And Max, what's the biggest thing for you from this call?
I was surprised when I discovered I should not be the Scrum Master, and I should stop being never be the bridge. So discovering, just as soon as I offloaded some things, there are now other things that are dependent on me. Right. And I liked how you integrated all the components with the online tools for your remote team. So that's what I really need to get into. That's what I want to focus on next.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, Atlassian has done an amazing job. I mean, like Atlassian has taken, like, they created Jira, they created, like Australian company, but now worth billions, because they basically just took all these different tools and said, right, we want to turn them all into actually the processes. So they've done a really good job with that. And it's so interesting because so much of what we've always talked about at Wealth Dynamics Masters, which is how to actually run everything in parallel, they just turned all of that into now what, like obviously Scrum methodology, Agile, all the top companies now do this, because it's impossible to really grow the business any other way without things bumping into, because everything's so fast moving. So that whole kind of shift in mindset is, there isn't a single exponential business out there that does things in series. It's just impossible. There's just there's too many moving parts going at too many different paces for that to happen. And the sign wrong, or that it's not designed right, is everyone saying, well, I would do the job, but I can't because I'm waiting for somebody else, right? And that's when you know that there's a real issue there, right? So how do you actually move it from one lane highway where the truck's stopping everybody to basically 5, 6, 7, 8 lanes, and make sure, and if you've got 8 lanes that are all blocked up, start with the first lane and just unblock it. Just unblock one lane and say, right, all the way from a customer coming in to a customer leaving and paying money and being happy, it actually works. And get focused at that one lane and get that right first, and then move on to the next one. And as you start doing that, then the whole thing starts clearing up. But definitely key if you're kind of re-engineering the business as well. And I think that for each of us is kind of like all part of the whole kind of exponential kind of mindset that we're all working towards. Okay, guys. Well, look, it's been a great call. Good to catch up with everyone. And what you heard about the World Game is all happening. We're very excited by it. So it's going to be kind of groovy in the coming months. And we'll catch up again on our next call. Anything else in the meantime, drop me a line, let me know. And looking forward to seeing all the adventures in the month ahead. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll catch up with you later. Bye.